Hello everyone, today the admin is back with a fiery boxing series for you all. The story revolves around a young man who, affected by his father's obsessive-compulsive disorder, becomes a victim of school bullying. After his father's death, the young man received the gift his father left behind. And then, thanks to that, he could see the future, narrowly escaping death. Feel free to check out the details next. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the admin. Thank you everyone. The story begins with a young man named John Seo-hoo, our main character, who is sobbing uncontrollably in deep sorrow. Seo-hoo run touched the new virtual reality glass box lying on the floor, sobbing, saying, "How could Dad die like that? How am I supposed to live alone now?" Seo-hoo watched his father hanging himself right in front of his eyes, unable to hold back. He choked and cried out, "Dad," twice. Shortly after, Seo-hoo's father's funeral took place. Because there weren't many relatives or friends, no one came to visit or light incense. Only 2 police officers came to find Seo-hoo to investigate his father's death. The police officer asked Seo-hoo if the victim Cheon Seo-han had left anything behind before he died, like a last word or something. Seo-hoo buried his face in the pillow and choked out that if he had known it would be like this, he wouldn't have done it. His disjointed words left the police officers completely puzzled. The reason Seo-hoo said that is because he thought of his father many years ago. Seo-hoo's mother passed away when he was 5 years old, and since then, Seo-hoo's father has had too many worries. Seo-hoo didn't know why his mother passed away because his father had never told him. However, since the death of Seo-hoo's mother, his father has been a bit strange. Back then, he muttered the same words as Seo-hoo, saying that if he had known things would turn out this way, he wouldn't have done it. After Seo-hoo's mother passed away, his father had to bear all the burdens. And from that moment, he became worried about everything, like when taking Seo-hoo to kindergarten. Just stepping out the door, he already wondered if he had turned off the stove. Because he was afraid he hadn't turned off the stove, he ran back into the house to check again. After checking the stove, there are still countless other things that need to be inspected. For example, windows, water pipes, and so on and so forth. And every time Seo-hoo's father and son go out like that, it usually takes more than an hour due to the father's excessive worry. Seo-hoo naturally noticed that, not only him but everyone around said that his father had a severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. Seo-hoo grew up with a father like that, so he became a coward. He became a victim of school bullying because of his timid and anxious personality, just like his father. Seo-hoo was frequently cornered behind the school by a group of delinquent youths and subjected to countless insults. They said to Seo-hoo, "I haven't even hit you yet, you fool. Are you scared just because I raised my hand? You're such a coward." Those guys joked saying, "Isn't it because he's the son of some crazy old man? His dad is famous around this neighborhood anyway." It seems that yesterday he also reported a gas pipeline leak, so the fire department had to go to his house 3 times. What a hassle. Some troublemakers sneered at Seo-hoo, "Your dad doesn't have a job, does he? He's been unemployed for a while now. Who would dare hire someone like that? Everyone in this neighborhood hates you, can't you move away? Just your existence is enough to make us sick of you." Seo-hoo didn't dare to retort, just bracing himself as they approached, ready to defend. His actions only made the troublemakers even more delighted. They burst out laughing and said, "This stupid guy did it again. He's so dumb I couldn't even bring myself to hit him." Seo-hoo just took all the insults at school. After school, Seo-hoo returned to the old apartment where the 2 of them lived. Because of long-term unemployment, his father stayed home all day, burying himself in the computer. He stared at the stock interface with red eyes, repeatedly saying that the stock prices had dropped again today. If he had invested, it would have been a big deal. Today's horoscope said his financial luck wasn't looking too good. "I've already put all 400,000 won I had in the bank into this," Seo-hoo's father said, his voice trembling and his nail-biting showing his fear and anxiety. Right at this moment, Seo-hoo came home. Seeing his son, Seo-hoo's father asked, "Seo-hoo, didn't you bring an umbrella?" Seo-hoo replied, confused, "But it's not raining, Dad." However, he kept complaining, saying that even if it didn't rain, we still had to bring it because the weather forecast said there was a 40% chance of rain today. "If I had known this earlier, I would have prepared for you this morning." Seo-hoo was so fed up with seeing his father like that, he angrily shouted, "I told you to stop." He was so angry that his eyes welled up with tears. He growled and said, "The landlady wants to kick us out. She said she can't live with people like us." Seo-hoo's father didn't react much. He calmly said he knew this would happen, that his dream last night was exactly like this. This made Seo-hoo even more furious, and he shouted at his father to please stop. "Why does Dad keep repeating the phrase 'knew it'? Who could have known and still be alive like this? Dad, do you still remember today is my birthday?" Dad. Seo-hoo froze when he heard that. He was about to say something when Seo Hu directly interrupted and left. Before leaving, Seo Hu told his father that instead of worrying about him, he should use that time to take care of his own life. Because of you, Dad, I'm too ashamed to live. If you have eyes, look at yourself in the mirror. Dad, can't you show just a little bit of courage? Can't you live like a normal person? If I keep living like this, I'd rather die. After saying this, Seo Hu slammed the door shut. Seo Hu's father was stunned by his son's words, and he remained silent for a long time. Then he actually looked at himself in the mirror. At that moment, Seo Hu's father realized how he had lived all those years, which might have been the reason why he chose to end his life. The two police officers couldn't gather any information from Seo Hu, so they went to their apartment complex to investigate. They finally found Seo Hu's father's will. If it were called a will, it would be more accurate to say it resembled a letter that Seo Hu's father left for him. He wrote that if he had known things would turn out this way, he would have asked his son what he liked. But this might be the last gift, I don't know if you'll like it. In the end, father still couldn't protect you, sorry Seo Hu. Dad and mom in heaven will pray for Seo Hu's happiness, and pray for your success. I hope you walk on a path filled with flowers and have a bright, prosperous future. Late that night, after reading the tear-stained letter from his father, Seo Hu returned to the old house on the rooftop of the apartment building. Hearing footsteps, the landlady quickly opened the door and said, Seo Hu, if you can't pay the rent, then pack up and leave right away. You know you don't have any deposit left, right? Without waiting for Seo Hu to respond, she frowned, turned back into the house, and said, oh no, someone recently died in that room. If any rumor spread, no one will dare to rent it. Damn it. Seo Hu stood in a daze, watching the landlady. He tiredly dragged himself back to the inn. Seo Hu muttered, is it that hard to ask if I'm okay? Yet the landlady, upon seeing someone who just lost his father like him, only knew how to spew those harsh words. Seo Hu lowered his head, telling himself that someone like him didn't matter anymore, and no one cared about him now. Seo Hu stared at the virtual reality headset, the last birthday gift his father had left him. Seo Hu, feeling emotional, said, the only person who always took care of me in this world was my father, right? Seo Hu knelt down and slowly opened the glass box. He choked up, touched the gift, then softly whispered his thanks to Bo. Tears streamed down Seo Hu's face as he sobbed, saying that if his father had given him a gift, he should at least have seen him use it. Why did he have to be in such a rush? Why did Dad have to leave like that? Seo Hu sobbed as he tried on the virtual reality glasses his dad gave him. However, Seo Hu had just put on his glasses. Suddenly, a figure appeared before him. The person in question is none other than Chun Seo-han, Seo Hu's father. Just saw his father, Seo Hu's eyes widened in astonishment. He panicked and took off his glasses. Seo Hu stared in horror at the glasses in his hand, trembling as he wondered what had just happened. Suddenly, a mechanical voice from the glasses said, please use the device again. Seo Hu was bewildered, not understanding what on earth this was. Although it was a bit frightening, Seo Hu still wanted to take a clearer look again. He couldn't believe that was his father just now. However, this time, the figure appearing in front of Seo Hu was still his father, who seemed nothing more than a robot. He emotionlessly told Brivayu to begin. Chun Seo Hu Luvio Mot, the skill that can be used now is the ability to preview tomorrow's events extremely well within 1 minute. Seo Hu was confused and didn't understand what the preview was about. His father continued in a mechanical voice, saying that since there was only one skill available, it would automatically activate. Right after that, Seo Hu's father suddenly fell silent, and then his figure suddenly twisted and turned. Instead, Seo Hu's gaze fell upon another woman, someone completely unfamiliar. Seo Hu innocently asked who she was, and the woman calmly replied that she had met him since he was young, so it was natural that he didn't remember her. She took something out of the leather wallet and told Seo Hu that his father had instructed her to give it to him, saying it was just like the money his father left for him. She handed Seo Hu an envelope, then told him to use it to cover his living expenses. The woman wanted Seo Hu to accept it, but Seo Hu was still confused, so he hesitated and didn't dare to accept it. And then the envelope in the woman's hand suddenly had a torn corner, and money started falling out. Seo Hu was stunned when he saw this scene. Inside is not just 1 or 2 bills. Dozens of 50,000 won bills were falling all over the ground like autumn leaves. Seo Hu froze and stammered, asking what is this? Could it be real money? Right at this moment, the scene before Seo Hu suddenly shifted again. Seo Hu no longer saw the woman who gave him the money. Instead, the scene shifts back to the old house and his father appears once more, mechanically saying you have used up your skill of previewing tomorrow's very good event within a minute. The review Xien Duok Fep Ket Tuk, Noi Zong Loi Ne, Hin On Qua Boa Seo Hu Kung Bien Mat Mot Kach En Han Chong. Seo Hu suddenly woke up and called out for his dad, but there was no one around. And what just happened felt exactly like a dream, because Seo-hoo hadn't even put on the virtual reality glasses yet. Seo-hoo stared at the glasses lying on the floor, muttering that he was sure he had seen his father. Seo-hoo tried once again to activate the glasses, but no matter what he did, they wouldn't turn on, as if they were broken. Seo-hoo sighed and said, "Of course, how could you see the departed with something like this? Moreover, there's no way Dad would leave me money, just debts." Right at this moment, there was a knock on the door, and the person outside hurriedly asked if anyone was home. Seo-hoo opened the door and asked who it was. The person saw Seo-hoo and smiled, saying, "Oh my, you're Seo-hoo, right? You've grown up so fast. Can I come in for a moment?" The person who came was the woman that Seo-hoo had seen earlier when using the virtual reality glasses. Although deeply confused, Seo-hoo still invited the woman into the house. She sat opposite Seo-hoo and said, "I couldn't attend the funeral because I heard the news late. I'm very sorry. You must have had a really hard time on your own. No matter how I think about it, I still can't believe it. He is not the type to leave you alone." Seo-hoo couldn't hear a word the woman was saying. All he could think about was the scene he had seen in the virtual reality headset. Seo-hoo cleared his throat and asked, "Who are you?" The woman smiled and said exactly what Seo-hoo had heard before, that I've known you since you were little, so it's understandable if you don't remember now. She then took an envelope from her handbag. And just as planned, she handed the envelope of money to Seo-hoo and told him to use it to cover living expenses. Seo-hoo was petrified. He muttered that even the words were exactly the same. How could that be possible? The woman placed the envelope in Seo-hoo's hand and said, "There's also my business card inside, so if you have any trouble, feel free to contact me." Seo-hoo tried to open the envelope and saw that it indeed contained a thick stack of 50,000 won notes. Although he had anticipated it, Seo-hoo was still shocked by the amount of money. After finishing her task, the woman stood up and said, "I have something urgent today, so I must leave early." Seo-hoo quickly said, "Wait a minute, miss, to be honest, I don't even know who you are, so how can I accept such a large sum of money?" The woman smiled and said, "It's okay, just take it, because I have to pay your parents' debt." When the woman left, Seo-hoo was still in shock, unable to comprehend the enormous sum of money that had fallen from the sky. He muttered doubtfully, "Can this be trusted?" Suddenly, there was a loud, urgent knock on the door. The visitor was the landlady, and of course, she was there to collect the debt. Seo-hoo had just opened the door when she snapped, "Today I was planning to leave this room for the real estate." She pinched her nose, showing a look of disgust, then said, "Oh my God, this disgusting smell, have you not bothered to clean up at all? If you move out, you must clean everything thoroughly." Seo-hoo, feeling annoyed, directly handed her a stack of cash and coldly said, "Here's the rent and deposit." The landlady was stunned when Seo-hoo handed her the money. Seo-hoo frowned and asked her what's wrong. "Still not enough?" He angrily said, "Even if I have to move, I'll do it whenever I want. I'm busy now, so can you please go downstairs?" Now that he had money, the landlord naturally stopped bothering Seo-hoo. After getting inside, Seo-hoo counted the money again. Even though he had already paid a good amount for rent and deposit, he still had plenty left. If he spent it wisely, he could survive for a few more months. Seo-hoo took out the woman's business card and studied the information on it, discovering that the woman was a detective from the investigation unit at the Seoul police station. Her name was Sindachi. This information only made Seo-hoo more confused. He wondered how she could know his father, and she left so early that he didn't have a chance to ask anything. Seo-hoo glanced at the virtual reality headset lying idle on the floor, wondering why it still hadn't turned on. Seo-hoo started studying the glasses. He glanced at the charger, then realized he needed to charge the glasses. What if they weren't turning on because the battery was dead? It wasn't until late that night, when there was only an hour left in the day. The virtual reality glasses were charged by Seo-hoo for over 10 hours, yet after half a day, they still couldn't turn on. Seo-hoo anxiously picked it up, examining it back and forth. He sighed and said he'd probably have to take it to the repair center, but tomorrow he still had to go to school. Right at this moment, suddenly the glasses made a sound, saying "Please put on the device." Seo-hoo was startled by it. He awkwardly followed the glasses' instructions. So Seo-hoo slowly put on his glasses. Immediately after that, the image of Seo-hoo's father appeared again. He mechanically repeated the exact same words as yesterday. "Preview may now begin." Seo-hoo hurriedly asked, "Dad, it's me, can't you see me, Dad?" Seo-hoo replied emotionlessly, saying, "I don't understand this command." Seo-hoo was still bewildered when his father continued, "Luvio up, congratulations to Chon Seo-hoo for reaching level 2. The current skill that can be used is to preview the worst thing that will happen tomorrow." Seo-hoo was surprised to hear that and wondered why this time it's not something good like yesterday. Think so? Seo-hoo directly asked his dad, "You said yesterday that it was extremely good news. why is it now the worst? Seo-hoo's dad mechanically replied, I don't understand this order. He continued speaking systematically, saying that since there is only one usable skill, it will automatically activate. Do not wait for Seo-hoo to ask anything more. The image before his eyes began to shift again. Soon, Seo-hoo's vision blurred, and then he saw the scene of a school appearing before him. Seo-hoo looked around in confusion, not understanding why the scene had changed to a school, when he heard a commotion nearby. Two of Seo-hoo's classmates are arguing on the soccer field. Seo-hoo was drawn into their fight. What Seo-hoo was concerned about wasn't just the argument, but also that the virtual reality glasses allowed him to hear sounds exactly as they were in real life. Seo-hoo had no idea that a huge brick was falling straight down right above him. Right after that, fresh blood splattered from the top of Seo-hoo's head. Seo-hoo was injured by a brick to the head and collapsed to the ground. In the blink of an eye before Seo-hoo lost consciousness, he saw that the bullies who had harassed him were the ones who had thrown the brick down. They were panicking because the brick had hit Seo-hoo, and they even intended to run away, leaving Seo-hoo injured and sprawled out on the ground. Seo-hoo's vision became blurry. He then fell into a deep coma. The mechanical sound from the device echoed again, saying that you have exhausted your skills. Borivayu will now conclude. Seo-hoo returned to reality once again, tiredly rubbing his neck. He felt a pain as if he had actually been hit. Seo-hoo nervously examined the virtual reality glasses, wondering what on earth this thing was. The next morning, Seo-hoo went to school as usual. He was called to the teacher's office for a talk. Mainly the homeroom teacher wanted to comfort Seo-hoo with a few words because of the sudden and heartbreaking death of his father. He gave Seo-hoo a few instructions before allowing Seo-hoo to leave the teacher's room. On the way to the cafeteria, Seo-hoo passed by a soccer field. The scene of two friends arguing was exactly like what Seo-hoo saw yesterday. Because he was so used to it, Seo-hoo was stunned. He stared blankly at the image, certain that everything matched exactly with what the glasses had predicted. Seo-hoo unconsciously looked up, quickly leaping backward. A large brick suddenly plummeted to the ground, shattering right in front of Seo-hoo. Its landing spot was exactly where Seo-hoo had been standing moments ago. If Seo-hoo hadn't anticipated it, he would have been a goner. The gang of thugs above burst into mocking laughter at Seo-hoo, teasing him saying that guy's scared, heard your dad's dead, congrats. Seo-hoo didn't pay attention to them and just stared at the broken pieces of brick. By now, Seo-hoo was certain that he could see the future through the virtual reality glasses his father had given him. After school, Seo-hoo hurried home. This morning's event made him both excited and eager. He could actually see what would happen tomorrow. Seo-hoo pressed the virtual reality glasses, but no matter how many times he pressed, they wouldn't turn on. Seo-hoo anxiously asked, why isn't it working? I've been charging it since this morning. Seo-hoo looked at the clock and sighed, deciding to wait until night. Yesterday, he could only open the glasses around 11 at night. Late that night. Indeed, Seo-hoo managed to start the virtual reality glasses. Seo-hoo's father appeared, and the machine said, Borivayu, may I begin? Seo-hoo hurriedly asked, Dad, what is this about? Seo-hoo's father mechanically said that he couldn't understand this command. Seo-hoo finally stopped being curious, sighed, and said, all right, go ahead, Dad. Shortly after, the mechanical sound announced level up, congratulations to Cheon Seo-hoo for reaching level 3. Seo-hoo was surprised and said, that was fast, leveling up so quickly. He eagerly said if the level keeps increasing like this, could he use a better skill, something like knowing lottery results in advance or something like that, or maybe stock prices and cryptocurrencies too. However, Seo-hoo's father still insisted that I could not understand this command. Seo-hoo felt a bit disappointed, but he quickly put his worries behind him. Seo-hoo asked his father Seokyu what level 3 is. Seo-hoo's father replied that Seokyu could use it in the present, which is to foresee extremely bad events happening tomorrow within 5 minutes. Seo-hoo was a bit surprised, the time had increased from 1 minute to 5. Seo-hoo told the machine, just show me first. Right after that, the image in front of me shifted, the multidimensional space seemed to be turned upside down. In the blink of an eye, Seo-hoo found himself appearing in the classroom, surrounded by a group of 3 notorious students. Not understanding the situation, they said to Seo-hoo, what the hell are you saying now, huh? He's saying he knew we were going to do this today. Fatty Choi Sungdon walked up and teasingly asked Seo-hoo, so do you know this? Right after that, he suddenly delivered a crushing blow to the middle of Seo-hoo's stomach. Seeing Seo-hoo collapse in pain, the whole group burst into laughter and said, looks like you didn't know, huh? However, after a long while, Seo-hoo still didn't get up. At this point, the troublemakers started to panic. They nervously asked, what's going on, is he really not breathing anymore? Seo-hoo later really stopped breathing. Seo Hu saw this scene and panicked, breathing heavily, saying, "Am I going to be beaten to death tomorrow?" Seo Hu's father mechanically said, "Starting from level 3, you will get to use 5 skill training sessions." Seo Hu asked in surprise, "What's that?" Seo Hu's father said you could practice previewing 5 times, holding the controller with both hands. Seo Hu followed his father's instructions. He went to the glass box and took out the controller inside. Right after that, the dummy of Seo Hu's father announced that the first training session was about to begin. The space shifted again. Seo Hu returned to the scene where he was surrounded by bullies. Because Seo Hu knew he was about to be punched, he was extremely tense. Sure enough, right after that, the fat guy Choi Sang-don swung his fist. Seo Hu frantically pushed his hand away and shouted, "No." Fatty Choi Sang-don clearly couldn't believe that Seo Hu would fight back. His face showed obvious confusion, and his buddies burst out laughing, asking Choi Sang-don, "What the hell are you doing, losing to that fool Chan Seo Hu?" Choi Sang-don was enraged. He glared at Seo Hu and shouted, "You dare block me again and see what happens." Another punch from the fat guy swung towards Seo Hu's face. Not just punching, but because he was humiliated, the fat guy Choi Sang-don became even more ruthless, repeatedly kicking Seo Hu hard in the back of the neck while gritting his teeth and saying, "Block this, you dog." In the final bone-crushing kick, Seo Hu was beaten to death. Because Seo Hu died, the space shifted back. The VR headset notified that Seo Hu had 4 more training sessions left. Seo Hu was curled up on the floor, groaning, muttering that it hurt like hell. Even though it was just training, it didn't have to hurt this much. Seo Hu quickly got up and took a deep breath, then said, "If it doesn't hurt, if you don't push yourself, how can you expect proper training? Let's start over." Just like that, the entire late night, Seo Hu's old house on the rooftop remained lit, occasionally interrupted by a few painful screams. It was soon the next morning. Seo Hu went to school as usual, feeling nervous. Seo Hu knows he's about to run into trouble with those people. Sure. Here's the translated text. As expected, right after that, the 3 bullies entered the classroom. They looked at Seo Hu in the corner of the classroom and sighed, saying how boring the lunch break was. Every time they were bored, finding Cheon Seo Hu to play with was just perfect. Fatty Choi Sang-don raised his hand, about to hit Seo Hu. Normally, Seo Hu would shrink back in fear, but this time, not only did he not retreat, he also stared straight at the fat guy, Choi Sang-don. He was startled and said, "What's going on? Isn't this kid scared? Can't you see I'm about to hit you?" Choi Sang-don said as he raised his hand to strike Seo Hu again. Just saw Seo Hu smirk slightly. He casually told the fat guy, "Just do it, I'm not scared. I knew this would happen, so why be afraid?" Then the situation unfolded exactly as Seo Hu had foreseen. Every word was spot on. The chubby boy Choi Sang-don walked over to Seo Hu, laughing. Of course, he will throw a punch and say, "So do you know this?" Due to training all night, Seo Hu anticipated this guy's moves and easily countered with an outstretched hand. The fat one looked a bit dumbfounded, while the other 2 mocked him for being worse than someone like Cheon Seo Hu. Just like last night when Seo Hu was practicing, Choi Sang-don was humiliated and got furious, wanting to punch Seo Hu. However, Seo Hu clearly remembers the movements from the 5 practice sessions, so he could dodge the second punch. Seo Hu tried to recall the direction of Choi Sang-don's movements next time. Indeed, Choi Sang-don then kicked at Seo Hu, but Seo Hu safely dodged it. Fat boy Choi Sang-don missed 3 times in a row and was laughed at by his 2 companions. He was now boiling with rage. He shouted at Seo Hu, thinking, "We're always joking around, so you think you can push us? How about we have a proper fight then?" Seo Hu ignored the words of the fat guy. Seo Hu is now paying close attention to every step of Choi Sang-don's preparations. Thanks to the practice sessions, Seo Hu knows it's not the right time yet, just a little more waiting. Finally, it was time to dodge. Seo Hu quickly moved aside. "Then raise your foot." Fatty Choi Sang-don successfully took a tumble, legs up in the air. Just looking at it makes you feel the pain. The whole gang of thugs and classmates in the class were stunned by this surprising turn of events from Seo Hu. Seo Hu was extremely excited at this moment because he had done it. Regarding Choi Sang-don, he was humiliated and shouted, "Cheon Seo Hu, you damn bastard, today's your unlucky day." Seo Hu was instantly terrified. From this point, he didn't know what to do because the VR headset only allowed 5 practice attempts. If the chubby Choi Sang-don charged at him now, Seo Hu had no way to dodge. Just as the bell rang for class to start, 2 accomplices pulled Choi Sang-don back because the teacher arrived, but the fat one was still raging, shouting, "Damn it, get out of the way." He couldn't believe it. Just as he finished speaking, the leader of the group, Pat Dang-suk, glared at him and snarled at Choi Sang-don, "Did you just curse me out, you jerk?" The fat guy immediately got scared. he stammered. No, Dang-suk, I wasn't talking about you, that bastard Cheon Seo-hoo is really cunning. The name Pat Dang-suk approached Seo-hoo and said casually, you're pretty quick, aren't you? I've heard that if you hit the target often, your vision improves too. Is that the case for you as well? He got close to Seo-hoo's face, smirked coldly, and said, from what I see, it's worth a try. After class, have a one-on-one match with Sungdon, it should be fun. Seo-hoo, though very scared, still tried to remain calm and respond. Pat Dang-suk looked up at Seo-hoo. Seo-hoo shouted loudly with all his might, tomorrow I will hit you. The chubby boy Choi Sungdon, enraged, tried to rush forward to hit Seo-hoo but was held back by his friends. Pat Dang-suk smirked at Seo-hoo and sarcastically said, hilarious, isn't it? Can't do it today, so what's the difference if we fight tomorrow? Seo-hoo was about to answer when the teacher entered the classroom. He sternly said, the class bell rang a while ago, yet you're still standing there. Quickly take your seat. Thanks to that, the situation didn't escalate, but the attitude of the fat guy Choi Sung-don remained abrasive. He shoved Seo-hoo's shoulder hard and said, all right then, see you tomorrow, you bastard. I will definitely kill you. The cruel look in Choi Sung-don's eyes made Seo-hoo worried. Late that night, right at 11 o'clock at night, Seo-hoo turned on the virtual reality glasses again. Tomorrow, he would be fighting Choi Sung-don, so of course, he needed to prepare in advance. Seo-hoo firmly told the mirror to show me the way I can beat it. The sound of machinery quickly rang out, announcing that review was ready to begin. Level up, congratulations to John Seo-hoo for reaching level 4. Seo-hoo anxiously asked his dad, is it normal for the level to increase so quickly when you're just starting out? Are there any new skills? Seo-hoo's dad said the current skill you can use is that something extremely bad will happen tomorrow. You can see 5 minutes into the future and have 5 practice sessions. The new skill is that you're allowed to review what happened today 5 times within 10 minutes. Seo-hoo was a bit surprised. He wondered if he could see it again. What was that? The sound of the machine explained to Seo-hoo that among the things that happened today, you can choose which part you want to watch. You will be able to rewatch it 5 times within 10 minutes. Seo-hoo thought about it for a moment. A new skill to review things? But with everything already known today, what's the point of this? However, Seo-hoo quickly understood. If he rewatches the fight scene with Choi Sung-don, then he could figure out its weakness, right? Seo-hoo hurriedly told the glasses, replay the fight scene with Choi Sung-don, show me that part 5 times in 10 minutes. Right after that, the scene shifts back to this morning's classroom. Seo-hoo is astonished because the perspective is completely different, it's the view of an observer. Seo-hoo focused on every move of Choi Sung-don, thinking to himself that the pig Sung-don must have a very weak lower body, unable to maintain balance. I'll punch it right here, can I take it down? 5 minutes had passed, so the glasses notified Seo-hoo that he had used up the replay skill. Seo-hoo smirked and muttered to himself, turns out the practice skill isn't so bad. The glasses added, you still have 5 minutes to preview the worst that will happen tomorrow. Thanks to the review, Seo-hoo now feels more confident. He smiled and said he would practice to ensure victory. The space shifted once again. However, the first image that appeared was the furious face of Pat Dang-suk instead of the chubby Choi Sung-don. He glared at Seo-hoo and said, this kid must really be crazy, huh? You dare hit me? Seo-hoo was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Immediately after, the terrifying fist of Pat Dang-suk struck Seo-hoo's face. He shouted that Seo-hoo was a damn brat, and Seo-hoo naturally took the punch squarely. Just one punch and Seo-hoo was instantly dead, so he escaped from the vision and returned to reality. Even though it was just practice, Seo-hoo screamed in pain. Seo-hoo hurriedly tossed the glasses aside. He looked at the glasses in horror and muttered, what is this? What happened? The worst thing that will happen tomorrow is that I'll have to fight Pat Dang-suk. It's impossible. Maybe Choi Sung-dong could do it, but Pat Dang-suk is the best fighter among the first-year students. I must be crazy to charge at that guy. The glasses on the floor kept repeating, please use the device again. Seo-hoo silently stared at the mirror for a long time. Then he decided to put his glasses back on. He still had 5 practice sessions left. After all, practicing in advance was better. Thinking like that, Seo-hoo regained the courage to prepare for the worst-case scenario tomorrow. After about 10 minutes, the review of the glasses ended. Seo-hoo hurriedly said, wait a minute, just one more time. Of course, the glasses won't give Seo-hoo any more chances to practice. Seo-hoo, drenched in sweat, took a deep breath and said, if we fight that guy tomorrow, I'm afraid I won't last even 2 minutes. I'm going to get beaten to death. So early in the morning, Seo-hoo decided to call his teacher to ask for a day off. Seo-hoo smiled and said, all right, as long as we don't go to school, no one will come to cause trouble today. I stayed up all night worrying about this nonsense, so now I'm really sleepy. First, sleep came, and then Seo Hu took a long nap. It wasn't until the rapid knocking on the door echoed. Seo Hu suddenly woke up. Outside were the shouts of those bullies. They kept yelling, "Chan Seo Hu, what are you doing? You think just skipping school will help you avoid us? We all know you live here. Yesterday I already told you, didn't I? You were afraid we'd beat you up, so you set up today's fight, right? Are you a scammer or something?" Seo Hu panicked, unsure of how to handle the situation. First, he had to call the police. However, Seo Hu just turned on the phone and realized the battery was dead. Seo Hu frantically searched for the charger. At that moment, Pat Deng-suk's voice echoed. He pressed close to Seo Hu's window and said, "Chan Seo Hu, aren't you inside? We heard some noise, didn't we? If you're not home, we'll break the door and take everything inside." As he finished speaking, the others chimed in, saying, "What does this guy's house even have for us to take?" Seo Hu knew well that these thugs would actually do it. He instinctively glanced at the virtual reality headset on the floor. Seo Hu thought to himself, this absolutely must not be taken away. In the end, Seo Hu finally decided to step out and face things head-on. Seeing Seo Hu, the fat guy Choi Sung-don mocked him, asking why he came out. Why didn't he keep hiding? Seo Hu calmly asked, "Where will we fight?" Fatty Choi Sung-don glared at Seo Hu. They say that the face reflects the soul, and they were right. There wasn't a single feature of his that was pleasant to look at. After that, they took Seo Hu to an empty construction site, a restricted area. The group moved to the back of an abandoned warehouse in this place. Fat Choi Sung-don shook his chubby neck and teasingly said, "Today, our poor Seo Hu, what can we do? I will make you regret for the rest of your life for daring to mess with me." Seo Hu coldly said, "Stop talking and just go in." This attitude of Seo Hu made the fat guy Choi Sung-don furious. He shouted at the brat and swung his fist. However, Seo Hu already knew his weaknesses. Seo Hu stepped back, waiting for Choi Sung-don to lose his momentum, then he threw another punch straight at the fat man's face. Choi Sung-don of course never imagined that Seo Hu could fight back against him. The guy behind frowned and shouted, "So annoying, hey Choi Sung-don, what's wrong with you since yesterday?" The chubby Choi Sung-don, embarrassed, charged again. As for Seo Hu, he had already watched the fight scene yesterday and even replayed it many times. So fighting that bastard Choi Sung-don, just for him to practice more. Practice thoroughly, Seo Hu is confident that he can do it. The two guys in the back froze when they saw Choi Sung-don getting beaten up by Seo Hu. Even Pat Deng-suk's expression changed. He casually said, "That's strange. Now that guy Chun Seo Hu is bad at both defending and fighting, isn't he? So it could actually take down that guy Sung-don." In the end, Seo Hu kicked once, sending the chubby Choi Sung-don flying straight into the wall behind. Seo Hu realized this was the perfect moment to finish it. So he hurriedly ran over and repeatedly kicked the fat guy, all the pent-up frustration pouring out. Seo Hu furiously shouted, "I told you not to, you damn bastard." Seo Hu was still fuming when Pat Deng-suk slowly approached and told him to stop, saying, "You've won." Seo Hu, panting heavily, looked at him and said, "Now stop bullying me." Pat Deng-suk tilted his head and said to Seo Hu, "I don't quite understand, even though you're a bit clumsy, you know how to fight, so why didn't you resist from the beginning? Why did you keep closing your eyes and being scared like a little kid recently? Because you take after your dad, that's why. Suddenly awakened your abilities, or something like that. If it's not that, then what is it? Did you only bounce back because your father died?" Their faces were full of mockery when they talked about this. The guy named Pat Deng-suk didn't know when to stop. He smirked and said to Seo Hu that he heard you saw your dad die with your own eyes, right? How did he die? How does it feel to see your dad die with your own eyes? Seo Hu couldn't hold himself back when he heard them joking about his father's death. Furious, he punched Pat Deng-suk in the face and shouted at him to stop saying things like that. This punch from Seo Hu left Pat Deng-suk in disbelief. Seo Hu also knew the bad omen had arrived. "Sure, here's the translated text according to your request." Sure enough, the situation he saw yesterday appeared. Pat Deng-suk, with red eyes, looked at Seo Hu and said, "Chun Seo Hu, is this kid really crazy? Did you just hit me?" Seo Hu saw the face of Pat Deng-suk, veins bulging, and felt tense inside. The worst thing that happened today was the fight with Pat Deng-suk. The inevitable has finally happened. The name Pat Deng-suk then frantically punched Seo Hu. He hit while saying, "Get up, you damn brat." Seo Hu was beaten so badly that he couldn't get up. The name Pat Deng-suk glared at Seo Hu, his eyes burning with anger as he snarled, "Today, I'll help you reunite with your father." Seo Hu shakily sat up. Last night he trained 5 times, so he knew clearly that no matter how he attacked now, he would be defeated by Pat Deng-suk in just 2 minutes. Seo-hoo secretly grabbed a handful of sand in his hand. Wait until Pat Dang-suk gets closer. Seo-hoo threw all the sand into his face. Translate this text into English with the following requirements. 1. The translation must be natural, concise, easy to understand, engaging, and in standard American style. 2. Names in the text should be transliterated internationally without using underscores, underscore symbol, quotation marks, ellipses, apostrophes, or any special characters at the beginning of the sentence. 3. For Vietnamese proper names with hyphens, hyphen symbol. Translate them into Korean phonetics, and those proper names must retain the hyphen. Pat Dang-suk's eyes were stinging with sand, and he screamed in pain. Taking advantage of the situation, Seo-hoo immediately took off running to save his life. There was only one thing he hadn't tried during training, and that was to fight back by throwing sand like this. First, he had to escape from here. Because his eyes were full of sand, Pat Dang-suk couldn't chase after him, and the remaining one of the three immediately went after Seo-hoo. The sun was slowly setting. Seo-hoo kept running for his life, with the thug relentlessly chasing him. The man kept shouting, "You dare throw sand in someone's eyes, you unlucky bastard." The gap between the two is getting closer. Seo-hoo seemed exhausted, as he had used too much energy fighting the fat guy Choi Sang-dan, so now his legs were gradually unable to run anymore. Seo-hoo kept running without knowing where to stop, and right in front of him was a wide road. Seo-hoo kept wandering out dreamily. Wait until he sobers up. Faced a speeding car coming straight at him. Luckily, the driver inside managed to brake in time. He opened the door and yelled at Seo-hoo, "Are you crazy, kid? What if there was an accident?" Seo-hoo panicked and pleaded with him, "Please help me." The thug who had been bullying saw this and stopped chasing Seo-hoo, grumbling as he turned back. It wasn't until nightfall that Seo-hoo finally trudged home. For now, he's managed to escape, but what about tomorrow? Seo-hoo clutched his head in agony. Pat Dang-suk could really kill him, or maybe he should just call the police. However, Seo-hoo immediately felt that this option wouldn't work. He didn't know how to report it to the police because today the one who fought with Choi Sang-dan and even threw sand into Pat Dang-suk's eyes was him. Suddenly, Seo-hoo thought, could they be blocking my door right now? Seo-hoo walked back out to the street, knowing that if he ran into them now, he might as well be done for. Suddenly, Seo-hoo felt something in his pocket. That was the business card from the other day of a woman named Sinda-chi. Seo-hoo, after contacting Sinda-chi, went to her house. They both went up to the rooftop and talked. Seo-hoo told her about being bullied and the names of the three jerks who beat him up. Sinda-chi sighed, saying it would be very difficult to resolve the school violence case without that evidence. She said she would contact the authorities, but for now, just keep monitoring the situation. I will ask the patrol team to make sure those kids can't come near your house anymore. Seo-hoo thanked with a grateful heart. Sinda-chi looked at Seo-hoo and asked if there was anything else. Seo-hoo was silent for a moment and then said, "I have paid the remaining rent with the money you gave me. But what's your relationship with my dad?" Seo-hoo thought for a moment and then calmly said, "Let's see, where should I start? Back in high school, I lived next door to you. I knew your mother first, she was a police officer." "What was that?" Seo-hoo was surprised to hear that. He asked Sinda-chi again, "Is your mother a police officer?" Sinda-chi asked, "You didn't know?" Seo-hoo lowered his eyes and said that his mother passed away when he was very young. If he asked about her, his father would get angry, so he didn't know much. Sinda-chi smiled and said, "So that's how it is." Seo-hoo looked at Sinda-chi and asked, "Are you helping me just because we live next to each other?" Sinda-chi heard that and burst out laughing. She told Seo-hoo that your mother is my lifesaver. When she was in high school, she met a male student from the same school, and your mother saved her from being sexually assaulted. But that guy's family was extremely wealthy, so they hired a famous law firm and got acquitted. Seo-hoo was shocked when he heard about all this. Sinda-chi took a big gulp of beer and said she had considered suicide out of sheer anger. The person who saved her this time was also your mother, and since that day, your father has been constantly asking if she's okay. They continuously reached out and took care of her. They also told her that she must never give up. As long as she is alive, there is still hope. Since my family moved away, I still kept in touch with your dad occasionally, until recently when it seemed strange. He's not the type to just leave like that. Seo-hoo was silent for a moment before saying that since his mother's passing, his father had changed a lot. Sinda-chi gently placed his hand on Seo-hoo's shoulder. She firmly told Seo-hoo that she really wanted to become a great police officer like his mother, and that was enough. So from now on, everything she received from his parents, she would return to him. Seo-hoo was a bit surprised by these words. Sinda-chi smiled brightly and said to Seo-hoo, "No matter how hard it gets, don't ever give up, as long as you're alive, there's still hope, got it? Seo Hu was stunned by her aura, and he instinctively agreed. Thanks to Sendechi's protection, Seo Hu made it home safely, not until 11 at night. Seo Hu put on the virtual reality glasses again. He stared at them for a long time before mumbling to himself, my mother is a police officer? Such a big secret, why didn't Dad tell me? Anyway, I already know everything, the mechanical sound from the glasses echoed, saying please use the device. Seo Hu put on his glasses, and the process was exactly the same as before. Seo Hu didn't know if his level had increased. However, Luvo's level is still the same as yesterday, so Sokyu remains unchanged. Seo Hu's father mechanically said that the way to level up is not to avoid but to face destiny. Seo Hu anxiously asked, so I have to fight Pat Dangsuk? But that guy is really good at fighting, how could he possibly beat someone who's 15 centimeters taller than him? The mechanical voice ignored Seo Hu's words and coldly suggested that the way to level up is to stop dodging and face your fate. Seo Hu sighed and said I already told you, I don't want to review what happened today, so show me if something really bad is going to happen tomorrow. The space quickly shifted, the scene before Seo Hu made him slightly confused, he wondered where this was, the alley behind the school? Immediately after, the vision suddenly blurred. Seo Hu couldn't see anything. Right after that, the voice of Pat Dangsuk echoed, he laughed mockingly and said so, how do you feel, pretty bitter, yesterday I almost went blind, you damn brat. Seo Hu unconsciously squinted, tears falling down. He quickly took off the virtual reality glasses and rubbed his eyes. Seo Hu only felt intense eye pain. From the beginning, he couldn't see anything, but he could still clearly hear Pat Dangsuk's voice. Seo Hu recalled the sand-throwing scene from yesterday, then hesitated and murmured, maybe it's trying to do exactly what I did. Although a bit scared, Seo Hu still decided to go ahead with the first training session. The space quickly shifted, this time Seo Hu managed to turn around in time to block the sand that Pat Dangsuk flung at his face. However, he told his accomplices to hold Seo Hu down and keep throwing sand in his face. Although Seo Hu was just practicing, he still felt intense pain. All night long, painful screams echoed continuously from the old house of Seo Hu on the rooftop. After 5 training sessions, Seo Hu was utterly exhausted. He collapsed onto the floor, panting heavily. Seo Hu realized that no matter what, he would be held down, and Pat Dangsuk would throw sand into his eyes. Seo Hu stared at the ceiling in despair, wondering if he had to face this. The next morning, Seo Hu went to school and, as expected, was dragged away by the gang of 3 thugs. They subdued Seo Hu to the alley behind the school. Fat boy Choi Sung-don gritted his teeth in rage and said, he did that to Dang Suc yesterday, yet he still dared to come to school. The name Pat Dangsuk suddenly bent down to grab a handful of sand. He then threw it all in Seo Hu's face. Seo Hu, reacting instinctively during practice, hurriedly raised both hands to cover his eyes. Pat Dangsuk smirked, stared at Seo Hu, and said, are you covering it up? Guys, hold him down. 2 accomplices immediately restrained Seo Hu tightly. Pat Dangsuk squatted down and grabbed a handful of sand. He looked at Seo Hu and said calmly, thanks to you, I almost went blind yesterday. Right after that, Pat Dangsuk grabbed Seo Hu's hair. He gritted his teeth and said, Seo Hu, open your eyes, you little bastard. After a fierce mental struggle, Seo Hu decided to open his eyes wide and face his fate as the glasses had said. The moment Pat Dangsuk threw the sand, Seo Hu shouted with all his might. At the decisive moment, Seo Hu pulled his hand out and blocked the pile of sand. Even Seo Hu didn't think he could do it. The accomplice was astonished, saying they had clearly grabbed it with both hands, asking how it managed to escape. Seo Hu stared in astonishment at his hand. Last night, even though he used all his strength during the final training session, he couldn't pull his hand out. Seo Hu clenched his fist, it seemed his strength had grown compared to before. Pat Dangsuk angrily shouted, you idiots, you couldn't even handle one person. Both of you, get out of the way. Pat Dangsuk raised his hand, gritting his teeth as he told Seo Hu, honestly, you've been surprising me more and more lately, you bastard. This time, Seo Hu couldn't defend himself and took the hit directly. Pat Dangsuk kept punching and kicking Seo Hu relentlessly. He shouted, come on, surprise me even more. What's the matter? Got nothing left? Seo Hu was beaten senseless. He had fought with Pat Dangsuk before, but it was just a few practice fights. Although Seo Hu always loses, at least he's not the only one getting hit, just seeing Seo Hu raise his hand to defend. Immediately after, under the astonished eyes of Pat Dangsuk, Seo Hu delivered a powerful punch to Pat Dangsuk's stomach. This punch from Seo Hu made the thugs nearby open their eyes wide. They couldn't have imagined that Cheon Seo Hu would dare to strike back at Dangsuk. Pat Dangsuk was beaten, and his face turned black. He was so angry that his veins bulged. Pat Dang-suk glared at Seo-hoo and asked if you're done yet. 2 minutes later, Seo-hoo was beaten so badly by Pat Dang-suk that he couldn't stand up. However, Pat Dang-suk was also hit. His mouth was bloodied by Seo-hoo's punch, and there were several fresh scratches on his neck. He came closer and kicked Seo-hoo hard, saying, "Seo-hoo, get up, show me what you got." "Show it again, you bastard," said Pat Dang-suk as he tried to kick Seo-hoo in the face. However, before he could strike, an old man from the floor above shouted loudly, "Hey, you little punks down there, if you want to fight, take it somewhere else, or I'll call the cops right now." The gang saw this and rushed to stop Pat Dang-suk, telling him to stop. "If you keep hitting him, he'll die." Pat Dang-suk gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, I'm worried someone will spread rumors that I got beaten when fighting with this Seo-hoo guy." Then they left, leaving Seo-hoo lying there, limp, uncertain if alive or dead. Wait until you can no longer hear footsteps. Seo-hoo slowly opened his eyes. He thought he was done for, but it seems he's still alive. Seo-hoo returned home that night. Seo-hoo looked at himself in the mirror, his entire body bruised and battered. Thankfully, when he went to the hospital for a checkup, no bones were found to be broken. But after being beaten so much, Seo-hoo's whole body ached to the point of exhaustion. Seo-hoo tiredly collapsed onto the mattress. As it was already 11 at night, the virtual reality headset automatically powered on, with a mechanical voice repeatedly saying, "Please put on the device." Seo-hoo raised an eyebrow. He closed his eyes wearily and said he couldn't do it, it hurt too much, so today he had to rest. However, the glasses kept insisting, "Please put the device on." Seo-hoo wanted to ignore it, but couldn't. He grumbled, put on his glasses, and said he needed to take a break. There's no way he could keep training with his body like that, and the space quickly shifted. As usual, Seo-hoo's father appeared. He told Chon Seo-hoo to level up. Congratulations to Chon Seo-hoo for reaching level 5. Seo-hoo sighed and said, "I understand that leveling up." The sound of machinery echoed again, announcing Chon Seo-hoo has acquired a new skill. Preview the worst thing that will happen tomorrow for 10 minutes and practice it 10 times. Review what happened today 10 times in an hour. Seo-hoo was shocked to hear that. The preview time remained the same, but why did the review time increase so much? Seo-hoo suddenly realized something. He crossed his arms and said, "Wait a minute, something isn't quite right. If we watch it for 10 minutes and practice 10 times, will it take 100 minutes? If you watch it for 1 hour and 10 times like that, it's 10 hours, right?" Seo-hoo's father mechanically replied, "Correct, you can use this skill." Seo-hoo was a bit annoyed. He angrily said, "I really have no words. If you keep watching for such a long time, almost 12 hours will pass. It's 11 o'clock at night now. If I watch all of this, it'll be tomorrow already." But Seo-hoo's father said that while he was using the preview, real time wouldn't pass. Seo-hoo asked in shock, "What did you say?" The sound of machinery kept repeating, saying that while he was using the preview, real time would not pass. Seo-hoo didn't seem to believe it, so he took off his glasses and looked at the watch. "Sure. Here is your text translated." Indeed, the time still showed 11 o'clock, not moving a minute since he put on his glasses. Seo-hoo analyzed thoughtfully, mumbling that looking back, if all skills were used at level 4, it would take an hour, but if starting at 11 p.m. now, it would still end at 11 p.m., right? Seo-hoo suddenly thought of something, so he put his glasses back on. "Then tell Dad that I can review an hour 10 times, right?" The mechanical sound echoes, saying you can choose the part you want. Seo-hoo smiled and said, "Then please repeat 10 times the 1-hour period that I dreamed of at dawn today." Immediately after receiving the order from Seo-hoo, Kin's skills were activated. The space quickly shifted. The scene that Seo-hoo wanted to see again was himself sleeping soundly at home. Seo-hoo cheerfully asked to replay it 10 times an hour here. Just like that, Seo-hoo took advantage of the review part. To sleep and sleep, repeatedly sleeping for the body to recover. Seo-hoo slept until he used up all his review skills. Seo-hoo had slept enough, so he took off the virtual reality headset. Then he took off his shirt and checked his body again. Seo-hoo looked at himself in the mirror and couldn't contain his amazement. His body was less painful than before, and suddenly it clearly became better. Seo-hoo put on the control gloves, mumbling that while using this, even if time stops in this world, time within his body still passes. Able to recover quickly over a relatively short period, Seo-hoo put on the VR headset again. Now, he will use his current skill to preview the bad things that will happen 10 minutes tomorrow, then practice 10 times. Because his body had improved, he was extremely excited to see just how bad things could get. The space shifted again. Seo-hoo was taken to a room, which turned out to be his classroom. Suddenly, Seo-hoo heard the voice of the fat guy Choi Sang-don. He said, "Chun Seo-hoo, you crazy guy. You just landed a kick with Jang Suk style, and the expression on his face, along with the classmates' reactions as they looked at Seo-hoo, was clearly one of horror. Seo-hoo, confused, pointed at himself and said, "What did you say? Did I hit him first?" Seo-hoo panicked, took off his glasses, and exclaimed in alarm, "This is really impossible. I'm lucky to be alive today, but even if I die, I can't fight against Dang-suk." Seo-hoo said this, and his voice suddenly dropped. He looked at the virtual reality headset in his hand, then wondered what he was doing right now. "I said I would die with Dad, but now I'm afraid of dying." Seo-hoo remembered the last words he said to his father when he was still alive, that if he kept living like this, he would rather die. Seo-hoo, with tears welling up in his eyes, choked out that he couldn't live like this, because saying such words to his father had led to his death. Seo-hoo decided to put on his glasses and face those scenes once again. He was determined to tell a coward, "Is this how you're going to live? Please, let me see it again." By the next morning, at Seo-hoo's school, it was now 9 in the morning, the usual break time for students. The group of bullies gathered together, laughing and saying that John Seo-hoo probably wouldn't make it to school today since he dared to fight back against Dang-suk like that yesterday. It must have gone to the hospital by now. Pat Dang-suk laughed, saying a parentless child like her couldn't do anything. What could she achieve all alone? The chubby boy named Choi Sung-don quietly said while eating, "But it suddenly changed a lot. Aren't you afraid it'll do something crazy? A few days ago, even a single gesture from us was enough to scare it." The buzzcut guy burst out laughing. He mocked Choi Sung-don, saying, "You bastard, were you afraid of losing to Seo-hoo last time?" The chubby Choi Sung-don angrily replied, "Damn it, that was just because I was careless then. If I catch you again, you must win at all costs." After the fat guy named Choi Sung-don finished speaking, Seo-hoo suddenly rushed in and kicked Pat Dang-suk straight in the face. The scene that just happened left everyone terrified. Not just three thugs. All the classmates stared wide-eyed at Seo-hoo. Pat Dang-suk was so enraged that he burst out laughing. He had veins bulging on his neck, slowly took off his outer shirt, and glared at Seo-hoo. "Are you crazy? Do you really think you can win?" Seo-hoo smirked and said, "Let's see," even though it was impossible. "I'm ready to die today." The name Pat Dang-suk burst out laughing. He put his hands in his pockets and asked Seo-hoo, "Are you ready to die?" This bastard Pat Dang-suk raised his hand, wanting to kill Seo-hoo. Thanks to the training sessions, Seo-hoo constantly dodged the fatal punches of Pat Dang-suk. He missed a few punches and then lost his temper. Pat Dang-suk gritted his teeth and shouted, "You're as good at hiding as those little mice." Last night, Seo-hoo practiced dodging for the 5th time. But he also knew that he couldn't beat Pat Dang-suk just by dodging blows. Even if he fought right here, he would still lose. Physically, they were already too different. Whether in long range or close combat, he would lose miserably. In the end, Seo-hoo got hit by a powerful punch from Pat Dang-suk. Although Seo-hoo still manages to hold on. The red-eyed Pat Dang-suk glared at Seo-hoo, his voice menacing as he snarled, "What the hell are you staring at, you bastard?" Seo-hoo suddenly turned and ran out of the classroom. Seo-hoo ran with all his might. The name Pat Dang-suk obviously won't let Seo-hoo escape easily. Seo-hoo couldn't afford to be caught here, so he ran up the emergency stairwell. When they reached the 5th floor, Pat Dang-suk burst out laughing and said, "This is the 5th floor, the door to the rooftop is locked. Where do you think you're going now?" Suddenly, Seo-hoo stopped running, braked sharply, and turned around. He took a running start and kicked straight into Pat Dang-suk's face. Thanks to the stair railing, Pat Dang-suk managed to hold on. He went mad and rushed to punch Seo-hoo to a pulp. However, his punch wasn't long enough to reach Seo-hoo's face. Seo-hoo took this opportunity to kick him again. Pat Dang-suk was kicked down the stairs by Seo-hoo, tumbling violently. When his two accomplices arrived and witnessed the scene, they were left wide-eyed and speechless. Seo-hoo stood above, staring intently at Pat Dang-suk. He had discovered this spot on the stairs during practice yesterday. Because this is the 5th floor, right below the rooftop, no one comes down from above. Pat Dang-suk has to get up here so he can't kick anymore. The legs of Pat Dang-suk are longer than his arms, so as long as Seo-hoo stays in the right position. So the siege on top of the fortress wall will have an unconditional advantage for Seo-hoo. The buzzcut guy and the chubby Choi Sung-don shouted at Seo-hoo, "You little brat, what dirty trick are you planning now? If you started it, come down here and fight." Seo-hoo replied blandly, saying, "I've fought with my life on the line. There's no way I would be cowardly. If I were here, you couldn't beat me, Pat Dang-suk." Pat Dang-suk, enraged, growled that there's nothing dishonorable about fighting, right? Right after that, Pat Dang-suk used his foot to nudge a long wooden stick. He pointed the stick at Seo-hoo's face and smirked, saying, "Even this isn't cowardly, right?" Seo-hoo wasn't too surprised by this. Pat Dang-suk grabbing a weapon and charging in was exactly like what he saw during the 7th training session. Pat Dang-suk, carrying a wooden stick, charged forward intending to kill Seo-hoo. However, Seo-hoo reached out and grabbed the wooden stick before he could strike down. Pat Dang-suk glared at Seo-hoo. He gritted his teeth and said, "You dare to challenge me." Right after that, the two sides struggled fiercely. This is also the opportunity that Seo-hoo saw during the 8th practice session. The moment Pat Dang-suk applied force, Seo-hoo let go, which would disrupt the balance and cause Pat Dang-suk to fall. Right at this moment, Seo-hoo will deliver a deadly kick, instantly rendering Pat Dang-suk unable to strike back. Two accomplices were horrified at the sight. Seo-hoo is still taking advantage of the situation, landing blow after blow on Pat Dang-suk's face. Other students also gathered at the hallway landing to gossip, and they were even more shocked and they saw Dang-suk being beaten badly by Chun Seo-hoo. Seo-hoo is still furiously hitting Pat Dang-suk. He gritted his teeth, grabbed Seo-hoo's hand tightly, and asked if he was done hitting. Pat Dang-suk sat up suddenly and pushed Seo-hoo away. Seo-hoo had seen this scene before. He knew the problem would start here. Even during the last practice session last night, he still couldn't find a way to defeat Pat Dang-suk. Seo-hoo trembled as he tightened his grip. His attacks were too weak, and his stamina had already declined. Everything he had prepared from his previous glimpse into the future had now reached its limit. Pat Dang-suk, with red eyes, said to Seo-hoo, "Looking at you now, I've already made a few plans ahead, but do you have nothing left to play?" Pat Dang-suk threw a powerful punch straight at Seo-hoo's face. Seo-hoo was slammed into the stair railing, and Pat Dang-suk sneered coldly as he slowly approached. He smirked and said, "It seems like there's nothing left, right? Now you're done running away, aren't you?" He lowered his head, staring into the void. As soon as Pat Dang-suk was about to make a move, suddenly, Seo-hoo grabbed the stick and shakily stood up. Pat Dang-suk laughed and said, "You think by picking that up, you can somehow challenge me?" Seo-hoo really swung the wooden stick in his hand. However, what he used all his strength to smash was not Pat Dang-suk but the 5th floor window glass. This action by Seo-hoo made Pat Dang-suk's eyes widen in surprise. Even the onlookers, from accomplices to the surrounding students, everyone was terrified. The fat guy Choi Sung-don exclaimed, "Is that bastard really crazy?" Seo-hoo slowly climbed onto the broken window, coldly asking Pat Dang-suk, "How about it, didn't you tell me to die? You just need to come close and barely touch me, and I could fall and die right here. You told me to kill you, didn't you?" Pat Dang-suk burst into laughter. He said, "You bastard, you have nothing left to do, so you're putting on this act, right?" Seo-hoo just smirked and asked Pat Dang-suk, "Are you scared?" Pat Dang-suk, enraged, moved forward and said, "Fine, I'll push you then, you dog." Right when Pat Dang-suk's hand was about to touch Seo-hoo's leg, even before touching it, Seo-hoo had already let go. Pat Dang-suk immediately panicked, because Seo-hoo actually let his body fall freely from the 5th floor. Pat Dang-suk panicked, yelling at the crazy guy, and he quickly grabbed Seo-hoo's legs. Pat Dang-suk turned and yelled at his gang, "What the hell are you guys doing? Get out here and pull him up." Thanks to the sheer number of people, Pat Dang-suk finally managed to pull Seo-hoo back inside. Furious, he shouted, "Do you really want to fall down too? Are you crazy for not fighting back?" Pat Dang-suk trembled and said, "You want to turn someone into a murderer, right?" Seo-hoo's cold voice echoed. He told Pat Dang-suk, "You asked me how I felt when I saw my father die, didn't you? How does it feel? Just like dying. Is there any worse feeling in the world than this? It's so bad that I want to die too, but I can't find the courage to do it," said Seo-hoo as he picked up a sharp broken piece of glass. Seo-hoo stood up, blood dripping from the glass cut, and said to Pat Dang-suk, "Help me die." Translate this text into English with the following requirements. 1. The translation style must be natural, concise, easy to understand, engaging, and in American style. 2. Names in the text need to be transliterated into international phonetics, without using underscores, underscore symbol, quotation marks, ellipses, apostrophes, or any special characters at the beginning of sentences. 3. For Vietnamese proper names with hyphens, hyphen symbol. Translate them into international phonetics for Korean names, and these proper names must have hyphens in between. This is the text. You told me to just die already, didn't you? The sight of Seo-hoo made Pat Dang-suk somewhat fearful. He stepped back and told Seo-hoo not to come any closer. Seo-hoo pointed the sharp edge of the glass shard towards Seo-hoo, coldly saying, "It's okay, just stab with this." Seo-hoo's action terrified Pat Dang-suk, who turned pale. Seo-hoo smirked and glared at Pat Dang-suk, "You can't kill me? Then I'll kill you." Seo-hoo clenched the glass shard so tightly that blood oozed out. He lunged forward and swung the shard of glass towards Pat Dang-suk, but he dodged it. The name Pat Dang-suk then threw a punch at Seo-hoo's face. Seo-hoo was beaten flat on the floor. However, he acted like he wasn't afraid at all, sitting up and staring at Pat Dang-suk, saying, "A single punch won't kill me." Seo-hoo raised the blood-stained piece of glass in his hand and said to Pat Dang-suk, "I told you to use this." Pat Dang-suk couldn't believe he ran into such a reckless guy. He cursed loudly and ran away. Some gang members quickly ran after Pat Dang-suk. Waited until they were all gone, Seo-hoo sighed and dropped the shard of glass in his hand to the ground. He sat dazed against the wall, mumbling that he had resolved to die, yet here he was, alive again. 1 hour later, a group of 3 thugs gathered in the alley behind the school to discuss. They couldn't believe it and said, "What on earth is wrong with that guy John Seo-hoo?" The chubby guy Choi Sung-don worriedly asked, "What did they say? Did he tell the teacher that he fought with Dang-suk?" The student with the buzz cut told other students that they had confessed to the teacher that Chon Seo-hoo, stressed after his father's death, broke the door and then self-harmed. He said Chon Seo-hoo was one of the students the teacher cared about, so maybe that's why the teacher turned a blind eye this time. The fat Choi Sung-don scoffed, saying that it's probably because that jerk is afraid of us getting revenge, so he didn't dare tell the teacher. Pat Dang-suk angrily shouted at the idiots, "Didn't you see that Chon Seo-hoo turned back, looked, and then attacked me? Does anyone who's afraid of revenge look like that, huh?" The two asked hesitantly, "So what should we do, or should we just leave it alone from now on?" The name Pat Dang-suk yelled angrily, "Damn it, everyone in this school saw me fighting with Cheon Seo-hoo and then running away, and now you say just let it go?" He stubbed out the cigarette under his foot and yelled, saying that anyway, because I was too ashamed, that beggar kid couldn't be allowed to go to school in such a respectable way. Those two confusedly asked, "So what do you plan to do? Should we bring it here and beat it up?" Pat Dang-suk coldly replied, "Even if you stomp or beat it up, those things won't work on someone who wants to die." He smirked and told his accomplice, "Just throw him in jail." After a long day, night has finally come. Exactly at 11 o'clock at night, Seo-hoo took off the virtual reality glasses, having previously self-treated the wounds from this morning's battle. Seo-hoo, frustrated, asked the glasses, "Can't level up? Something big happened today, isn't that enough?" Seo-hoo looked at his scarred hands and sighed, saying first he would take some time to review and ease the pain in his hands. Seo-hoo wondered what terrible thing might happen tomorrow. After about 10 minutes of preview time, Seo-hoo gasped in horror, "What, is something like this really going to happen? I have to go to the police station tomorrow." The next day, after school was over, when the school bell rings, students in the class also started to leave. Suddenly, a fat guy named Choi Sung-don came to Seo-hoo and asked, "Are you free today? I heard about you fighting with Dang-suk. It seems like you hurt yourself, right?" Dang-suk said he's really thankful to you for that. "In a bit, the others will gather at my place in the evening, you should come and join us too. Today my parents aren't home either, so we plan to apologize to you for the unreasonable actions over the past time." Seo-hoo calmly said he knew, while the chubby Choi Sung-don seemed to not believe his ears. He never expected Seo-hoo to agree so easily. Seo-hoo smiled and repeated once more, "That I said I would go." Just like that, Seo-hoo and the thugs went to the house of the fat guy Choi Sung-don. Seo-hoo looked around and said, "Nice house." Inside, Pat Dang-suk and the crew cut guy were already there. They looked at Seo-hoo and said, "Thanks for coming. We've already ordered pizza, it'll be here in 30 minutes. Seo-hoo calmly said, "So you said you called me here to apologize. But the ones you've been bullying all this time, Song Kung-min is here too." Fatty Choi Sung-don casually put his arm around Seo-hoo, grinning as he said, "That's right, today we're going to make peace with you and Song Kyung-min. I called him over so we can get closer. Come check out my room, I've got a brand new computer." Then Choi Sung-don pulled Seo-hoo into the room. Outside, Pat Dang-suk watched Seo-hoo and smirked, saying it seems he fell into the trap, "Let's start gently." He glanced at the man named Song Kung-min. After that, Pat Dang-suk harshly asked Song Kung-min, "Do you fully understand what I'm saying? Do it properly. If you can endure today, I promise I won't bother you again in the future." While Seo-hoo was playing a computer game with the chubby Choi Sung-don, suddenly, the sounds of arguing and fighting from outside caught Seo-hoo's attention. Seo-hoo ran outside and saw Pat Dang-suk pinning Song Kung-min down and beating him brutally. Song Kung-min just endured being brutally beaten without daring to fight back, even weakly. Seo-hoo hurriedly intervened, shouting, "What are you doing? Stop it right now." Two accomplices glared at Seo-hoo and said, "You stay right there, can't you see Dang-suk is going crazy?" On this side, Pat Dang-suk continued to vent his anger mercilessly on Song Kung-min. Seo-hoo couldn't bear to watch any longer. He rushed forward and punched the fat guy, Choi Sung-don, in the face. Then he punched the guy with the buzz cut, making them back off. Pat Dang-suk hurriedly grabbed the scissors on the table, smirking as he said, "I'll help you smile with that crazy expression." He wants to use that scissors to stab Song Kung-min. However, Seo-hoo rushed over and snatched the scissors. Name Pat Dang-suk smirked and asked Seo-hoo, are you telling me to stab you with that, or are you planning to stab me? He pulled up his shirt and shouted Seo-hoo, stab me like you did yesterday, you bastard, you damn dog. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. Song Kung-min suddenly ran out of the house. The pizza delivery person was shocked when he saw Song Kung-min's appearance, while Song Kung-min struggled to ask for help for the child. The deliveryman hurriedly asked, what's wrong, student? What's with your face? Did someone hit you? Song Kung-min shuddered as he glanced inside. He pointed at Seo-hoo and said, that's the guy holding the scissors. So that night, Seo-hoo was really taken to the police station. At the police station, the thugs pretended to be the victims. They kept saying we really tried to stop him, I got hit right here too. The police officer blandly asked if the three of you tried to stop but couldn't hold back the student. Pat Dang-suk weakly replied, he was holding scissors and threatening, so what could I do? Fat boy Choi Sung-don quickly told his uncle to ask the kids at school, saying yesterday he broke a window and threatened them with a piece of glass. Right at this moment, Sindachi runs in from outside. She approached Seo-hoo and said to the police officer, you've had a hard time, I am Sindachi from the investigation department of the SO1 police station. The police officer told Sindachi that the pizza delivery employee's testimony also matched, so this time it's going to be tough. Currently we are also taking separate statements from the victim Song Kung-min. As arranged, this Cheon Seo-hoo will be handed over to the prosecution office. Sindachi looked at Seo-hoo and asked worriedly, Seo-hoo, is this true? Did you really do such things? Seo-hoo calmly replied, who would believe the one who hit, only the one who got hit would know. Sindachi seemed surprised to hear this from Seo-hoo. Translate this text into English with the following requirements. 1. The translation must be natural, concise, easy to understand, engaging, and conform to American English standards. 2. Names in the text should be written in the International Phonetic Alphabet, without using underscores, underscore symbol, quotation marks, ellipses, apostrophes, or any special characters at the beginning of the sentence. 3. For Vietnamese proper names with hyphens, translate them into the International Phonetic Alphabet for Korean names, ensuring those names have hyphens. This is the text. Seo-hoo called out Pat Dang-suk, and he casually said, why are you calling me, huh? Seo-hoo turned, smiled, and asked him, are you ready for prison? Last night around 11, the worst thing will happen tomorrow. Everything had already been arranged by Seo-hoo beforehand. At 11 o'clock last night Seo-hoo had foreseen the worst scenario happening today. Accordingly, he will be at the police station, suspected of being the culprit who beat Song Kung-min to death and also the one who wielded the scissors to threaten. That was all that could be predicted 10 minutes prior. Seo-hoo, bewildered, questioned himself. Attacking Song Kung-min was impossible for him, it was truly absurd. Seo-hoo tightened the controller in his hand, trembling as he said, this training is completely useless. At the very least, I should learn how to escape from the police station, right? Then Seo-hoo thought about it and said he was innocent, but how could he find the evidence to show them? Seo-hoo suddenly thought of a way. Returning to the present, Pat Dang-suk smirked and asked Seo-hoo, what are you mumbling about? Aren't you supposed to be thrown in jail? At this moment, a police officer came over and asked who Pat Dang-suk was. He looked at Pat Dang-suk and said, what kind of student is like a loafer or thug? The police officer investigating asked him, have you found anything, finished investigating the victim yet? That person took out something and said, during the investigation of the victim, I discovered this. He said, this is a recording pen. Everything that happened to the victim today is recorded in this pen. Please listen to this recording. After the investigator hit play on the recording, the thug voice of Pat Dang-suk echoed. He said, damn it, do you need me to repeat that again? Song Kyung-min, do you need me to repeat that again? Today you will be beaten by me and blamed on Cheon Seo-hoo. Repeat what you just heard from me, Song Kung-min, Dang-suk. I am someone who never breaks a promise. We'll give the same statement to the police. The name Pat Dang-suk hurriedly stood up. He hastily said, wait, there must be some mistake here. The officer banged the table and ordered him to sit down. The police officer tore up all the statements from earlier. He gritted his teeth and asked Pat Dang-suk, do you understand what a suspect and mastermind mean? If not, then learn it. From now on, the suspect and mastermind is you. The name Pat Dang-suk panicked and sat down. He clutched his head in despair, looking like he was on the verge of madness. Seo-hoo was then released along with Song Kung-min. Song Kung-min turned to Cheon Seo-hoo and said, I'm really sorry. Seo-hoo smiled and said that it was good everything had been resolved smoothly. Song Kung-min hesitated and asked Seo-hoo, but why did you give me that recording pen this morning? How did you know something like this would happen? Seo-hoo seemed a bit startled. Then he randomly made up a reason, saying it was just because those bastards wouldn't be able to bother me anymore, and I wouldn't have to live in fear of what they might do to me anymore. Song Kung-min thought it made sense. Then he left early because his mom came to pick him up, and the two said goodbye in a relaxed atmosphere. After Song Kung-min left, Sinda-chi arrived. Seo-hoo, surprised to see her, asked how she got there. Sinda-chi smiled and said that at first glance, she thought Pat Deng-suc would be expelled. Even though it's just school violence, the method was too brutal. Anyway, if there is no recorded evidence, you will have to take responsibility for everything. Where did you get that? Seo-hoo sighed, saying it was something his father had left behind. Seo-hoo said that his dad was very worried, and even though he didn't have money, he still decided to buy it. It's like a small recorder or a black box. Sinda-chi smiled and said, "Today it was me who saved you." Seo-hoo also smiled, he nodded and said, "Dad saved you." Sinda-chi cheerfully asked, "You must be really hungry by now, right? Let's go eat something." Both then stopped by a roadside noodle shop. Sinda-chi is very much like an older sister, she kept serving food to Seo-hoo. Sinda-chi told her that she heard his favorite dish was pork ribs. Seo-hoo was a bit surprised and asked if his father had told her that. Sinda-chi nodded and said that sometimes she sends and receives emails, "Your dad just keeps talking about you." When sending an email reminder about you becoming a police officer, he was genuinely happy, just like a biological father would be. Seo-hoo was eating and told me that he was probably even prouder than my real father. Sinda-chi smiled and said she didn't have a father. She wiped her tears and said that when she was little, her parents divorced. Later, her mother remarried another man and left, so she was raised by her grandmother. Seo-hoo quickly apologized for bringing this up. Sinda-chi chuckled, saying there was no need to apologize, not knowing is not a crime. Perhaps that is also why when you lived next to my house during high school, my parents helped you a lot. So let's treat each other like family, just call me Chidechi. Seo-hoo blushed, stammering for half a day but still couldn't say it. After finishing the meal, Seo-hoo went home. The timing happened to be exactly 11 o'clock at night. Seo-hoo called to inform Sinda-chi that he had arrived. He looked at his phone and smiled, thinking to himself, such a good person, why hasn't Dad mentioned this person to me until now? Because it was 11 o'clock, the virtual reality glasses automatically activated, and the notification sound kept repeating, "Please wear this device." Seo-hoo quickly turned on the light. He put on his glasses and asked no upgrades, nothing left to watch today. Then Seo-hoo commanded the virtual reality glasses to show the worst-case scenario that could happen tomorrow and watched for 10 minutes. The space begins to shift, this time it's the classroom again, and it's recess once more. Suddenly someone came looking for Seo-hoo. That someone Seo-hoo has never seen before. He asked Seo-hoo in a friendly manner, "Where do you live? Since it's a bit far, I'm not really familiar with this area." Because of his fear of being bullied, Seo-hoo sighed and said, "What did you say? If you want to hit me, then do it quickly." The new student was surprised and said, "Why should I hit you? Don't joke like that." Seo-hoo angrily stood up and shouted, "Stop this joke now, then I'll make the first move." Translate this text into English with the following requirements. 1. The translation must be natural, concise, easy to understand, engaging, and in standard American style. 2. Names in the text should be transliterated internationally, without using underscores, quotation marks, ellipses, apostrophes, or any special characters at the beginning of a sentence. 3. For Vietnamese names with hyphens. Translate them to International Korean transliteration, and these proper names should retain the hyphens. This is the text. The new student turned pale and said, "Why is it so scary? Did I do something wrong? If you're in a bad mood, please forgive me." Seo-hoo couldn't figure out what this guy was talking about. The other boy stammered and said, "Today is my first day here, let's get along well." The space shifted again. Seo-hoo tossed the glasses aside in frustration. He was confused and wondered what this was about. Just greeted and talked to a new student for 10 minutes, was that all? Is this the worst thing that could happen tomorrow? Could there be a problem with it? Seo-hoo put on the controller and then the glasses again. He muttered to himself, wondering if he should make the first move. Let's start the first training session. The space returned to the previous scene. This time, Seo-hoo made the first move against that guy. The friend kept apologizing, while Seo-hoo couldn't understand why he looked exactly like he used to. The boy knelt down, crying and begging Seo-hoo, saying he was truly sorry. This scene feels a bit unfamiliar to Seo-hoo. He removed the virtual reality glasses, and the space returned to reality. Seo-hoo looked at the glasses with a dark expression, muttering something under his breath, not believing that this could be the worst thing tomorrow, hoping nothing would go wrong. But it's pointless to keep fighting all day and letting bad things happen. Pat Deng-suk will be dealt with, right? Suddenly, Seo-hoo saw something. On the shelf is a series of stock investment books that his father had read before he died. Seo-hoo quickly came up with an idea. Now was the time for training. What if he used it to support something else? The space began to shift again. Everything happened exactly as before, but this time Seo-hoo searched for his phone. He quickly opened Google and searched for today's stock information. Seo-hoo then saw the categories that were surging. He quickly memorized the rising stocks. Seo-hoo eagerly said, "That's great, this amount of stock is enough, the cryptocurrency part will be covered in the remaining training." Time's up, so the VR headset also stopped. Seo-hoo quickly grabbed pen and paper to jot down everything before he forgot what he had just seen. Seo-hoo opened the drawer and checked how much money he had left. Seo-hoo counted for a while. He had 4.15 million won left. If he invested all this money, with an interest rate of 50%, by tomorrow that number will reach 2 million won. Seo-hoo joyfully looked at the virtual reality glasses, realizing that he could make money from them. Early the next morning, until 9 o'clock in the morning, Seo-hoo is still lost in stock market fantasies and doesn't even go to school. He stared blankly at the screen and mumbled, saying that if he wanted to open an account, it wouldn't be possible without a guardian. Seo-hoo sighed and said it was impossible to know the lottery results. You'd have to wait until after 9 p.m. on Saturday to find out. Seo-hoo teared up, telling himself that now Skew can only show him the worst of tomorrow for 10 minutes, and he can't choose the time he wants to see. Seo-hoo angrily tossed the phone aside, unable to use his abilities to become a billionaire because he was still a minor. Seo-hoo sat dazed by the door, mumbling that he was someone without parents, so he had to live in such sorrow. Seo-hoo suddenly thought of last night's dinner with Cinda-chi. She told him that from now on, they should consider each other as family. The warm scene kept flooding back into Seo-hoo's mind. This made him suddenly realize. Seo-hoo picked up the phone and firmly said that since this was money he couldn't take, let Da-chi have it. Seo-hoo called Cinda-chi, while he was still wondering whether he should ask her for half if he made a lot of money. The phone was quickly connected. Cinda-chi hadn't even had a chance to ask anything when Seo-hoo hurriedly said, "Sister, from now on, write down everything I say. First is stocks." She invested in ginseng bio and software ETI. Cinda-chi laughed, thinking that Seo-hoo was just joking. However, Seo-hoo said, "How much money do you have right now? Just put all your extra money into it anyway." However, Cinda-chi told Seo-hoo that Seo-hoo, "I absolutely do not play stocks or gamble." Seo-hoo asked in confusion, "Why?" Cinda-chi calmly said that when she was young, her father lost all his assets because of stock trading, which led to her parents' divorce. But in the end, Bo-chi even stole her piggy bank to play the lottery and gamble. The addiction to investing is scarier than any other addiction. Seo-hoo trembled when he heard these words, but he still said to Cinda-chi, "Sis, trust me this one time, this is real." With a person obsessed with investment like Cinda-chi, she naturally wouldn't do it. Cinda-chi smiled and said everyone starts thinking that way, that they will make money no matter what. Suddenly, Seo-hoo told Cinda-chi that this is definitely 100%, "I have a way to know everything in advance." Seo-hoo's words surprised Cinda-chi. She smiled and said, "Oh my, you sound just like your mom." Seo-hoo was taken aback when he heard this. Cinda-chi happily said, "That's right, when my mother saved you, I had already asked her before, 'How did they know you were there and come to find you?' And she said the same thing." She somehow knew everything in advance, and Seo-hoo unconsciously glanced at the virtual reality glasses behind him. The voice of Cinda-chi still echoed. She said that if you needed pocket money, she could give you some later, but now she's busy, so let's talk later. After this call, Seo-hoo was dazed, muttering that his mother had said there was a way to know in advance. Not until that afternoon. Seo-hoo just arrived in class, and Pat Dang-suk's two sidekicks were freaking out because their boss got sent to jail. The buzz-cut guy Bao heard that Dang-suk might actually go to jail. The fat guy Choi Sang-dong gritted his teeth and said Chun Seo-hoo really has a twisted mind. Suddenly, the buzz-cut guy said, "Anyway, my family might move." He sighed and said, "There's a rumor that last night we were taken to the police station. My mom said it's too embarrassing to live here." Fat Choi Sang-dong immediately panicked. He said, "Without Dang-suk, without you, what would I do?" Right at this moment, Seo-hoo walked in. He calmly told Seo-hoo glared at them and said, "I told you not to block the way, now get out of here, bastard." Those two immediately became as obedient as puppies and moved to the side to let Seo-hoo pass. Seo-hoo still hasn't given up and remains immersed in the pile of stocks. He tiredly held his head. Stocks and coins indeed went up as he saw yesterday. No matter what, he had to make money to survive. Seo-hoo angrily slammed the table, shouting, "Damn it, this is crazy, why don't you listen to me?" Two thugs immediately trembled with fear, deciding to move away rather than live in terror of Chun Seo-hoo. Then the teacher entered the classroom and told everyone to sit down. Following him was the friend Seo-hoo saw yesterday. His name is Kang Seon, a new student who just transferred. Because the only available seat was next to Seo-hoo, Kang Seon was assigned there by the teacher. The situation unfolded exactly as Seo Hu had seen last night. Kang Xian really came and shook hands to introduce himself to him. Seo Hu casually said that's fine, his eyes still glued to the phone screen. This scene was seen by Kang Xian. He asked Seo Hu, do you play stocks? I do too. Seo Hu sighed and said it's really nice. Did your parents create an account for you? Suddenly, Seo Hu thought of something. He turned to ask Kang Xian, can you also buy and sell stocks on your own? Kang Xian smiled warmly and said, of course. Seo Hu quickly shook hands with Kang Xian, cheerfully saying, you can call me Chun Seo Hu, let's get closer. Just like that, both became friends at first sight. Sang Esian was walking and telling me that he heard everyone saying you put Pat Dang-suk in jail for a day, you're amazing. Although he befriended him, Seo Hu remained cautious. He needed to know what kind of person this Kang Esian was. After all, yesterday's preview had already indicated that. The worst thing today was him running into that guy named Kang Xian. So Seo Hu hesitated and asked Kang Xian, what are your parents doing? Kang Xian replied that they are abroad. Seo Hu asked in surprise, so you live alone? Kang Xian shook his head and said I live with the housekeeper. This information made Seo Hu even more surprised. He exclaimed, your family even has a butler? Are you really that rich? Sang Esian smiled and said, after all, when in Korea, I want to go to a PC room with friends. Seo Hu was surprised when he heard about the PC room. After that, both of them actually went to the PC room in the city. Seo Hu shows Kang Xian how to use this machine. Sang Xian told me that he had invited you here, so I'll pay. Seo Hu is short on money, so of course, he didn't argue about it. Sang Esian took out a thick stack of money and asked Seo Hu, if we play for 2 hours, how much should we put in? Seo Hu panicked at the thickness of the stack of money. He quickly exclaimed why there was so much money. Just a few thousand won would be enough. Sang Esian let out an "oh," saying he still wasn't very familiar with Korean money. Seo Hu stared intently at Kang Xian, thinking to himself that this guy really had no idea at all. A typical rich kid, huh? Is this why he was seen as trouble in the preview? If I have to stay with someone like this, I might die of frustration. Both are about to play when someone shows up. They called Seo Hu and Kang Xian Jr.'s, then mockingly forced both out of the PC room. Seo Hu and the two were taken to the back of the construction site, where their target was the thick wallet of Kang Esian. Sang Esian is officially the prey to be looted. Now Seo Hu finally understood why meeting Kang Xian was such a bad idea, because it led to this outcome. Kang Esian didn't expect much of a threat before he directly pulled out his wallet and handed money to those thugs. Seo Hu angrily stopped Kang Xian. He shouted at Kang Xian, are you an idiot? Even if you have a lot of money, is this okay? The guys turned cold when Seo Hu interrupted them, glaring at him and saying, the owner of that money said they'd give it to me, so why are you talking like that? I've had enough of you from the start, you bastard. Then they realized Seo Hu was the one who had confronted Pat Dang-suk. So the whole group started whispering, saying that they heard that this guy Chan Seo Hu isn't ordinary at all. He smashed the school's window and even killed someone. Pat Dang-suk is currently under police investigation because of him. That jerk has been a troublemaker since middle school. The tall, dark-skinned guy smirked and asked Seo Hu, after your father died, did you completely lose your mind? Seo Hu's face turned cold as he replied, don't talk like that. Those people keep pushing their advantage. They threw a punch straight at Seo Hu's face. Seo Hu was slammed against the back wall. The name with the pretty stylish hair looked at Seo Hu and then smirked, saying I'm Kim Hwan Min, go ahead and break the glass or call the police, try whatever you want, I'm not scared of any of that. The text translated into English according to the given requirements. Kim Hwan Min lifted his foot again, wanting to kick Seo Hu, and he mockingly said, I'm not a student who got expelled, so it's really annoying. Will they figure out who I am and kill me? Before he could lower his foot, Kang Xian quickly handed over the money, telling Kim Hwan Min to take it and leave. Because they had money, they let Seo Hu go. However, Seo Hu then sat up and calmly asked them, you said you were going to kill me, right? Then kill and go. While the two bullies happily took the money and casually walked away, Sun-oh was propping himself up, trying to sit up after the punch. He muttered, you said you were going to kill me, right? The words made them turn their heads back in confusion. Kill me and then leave, he continued while struggling to stand up, his eyes showing anger, and his face seemed to be regaining composure. When the sentence was finished, Ka immediately received a punch straight to the face from Ong Min, causing his head to jerk to one side from the impact. Following that, he was hit with a powerful kick, sending his entire body crashing backward. In anger, Ong Min shouted, all right, you son of a bitch, I'll kill you. This is the text. Hey Tang Cho, Mei Tuong Mei La Ai Chu, Mei Tuong Tao Kong Dam Kai Mei Noi Jiat Mei Nu Mot Tang Cho Dien A, Nai Sao Du, motcu de nua tu fia ong min bei tang toi than suno, keen ka na tang veo mei ban nuakan got tu dong gon du. Seeing you collapse miserably, he got even more excited, stomping mercilessly on your battered body. In the face of punches, kicks, and threats from the bully, Suno still bravely retorted under the painful kick, "Kill me, you'll end up in jail, you bastard." This statement only fueled the raging anger of Mr. Min. As he was about to hit him a few more times, a stylish man suddenly appeared, wearing a suit and black sunglasses, coolly saying, "Stop. Go go." That person kept the same tone and told the bullies. Before his stern attitude, Sung Bum, standing next to Ong Min with the other two underlings, was quite flustered but still kept his contemptuous tone as he replied to the man, "Uncle, just pretend you didn't see anything and move along. Don't go outside and do something pointless," he said as he raised his hand toward the man. Immediately, Nuoi Dan Ong Mak Ao Vet Kia Lin Fan Kang Lai Bang Kach Nam Lei Ko Te Ka Ta Mot Kach En Han Nu Chop, Roy Tien Te Van Ko Te Ka Keen Ka So Hai Va Ku Len De Dao Dan. While Sung Bum was struggling with his twisted wrist, the man sternly spoke up and emphasized what he had just said, "I told you to stop and get lost." While those two were fighting, Suno passed out and was taken home by his new friend, Sian. When they got home, it was already quite dark, and only when it was close to 6 o'clock, Suno finally managed to open his eyes, feeling exhausted. "Beside you, Sian always sat there waiting for you to wake up, and when he saw you sit up from the bed, Sian immediately asked, 'Suno, are you okay?' At that moment, Suno's mind was still not fully functioning. He could only drowsily ask, 'What's going on? Why are you still here?' Seeing Sono looking puzzled, his friend asked, 'You don't remember? There was a man who walked past us.' Then he started complaining that Suno went to the emergency room for a checkup, and he even said that Suno showed symptoms of a concussion, so he was about to admit him to the hospital. But Suno, despite being drowsy, insisted on going home today. So Sion took him home, and as soon as they got there, he fell asleep until just before 6 o'clock. Hearing that his friend had kindly taken the time to care for him and explain everything, Sono could only shyly tell Sion that he understood a bit more now. Seeing that his friend seemed to be doing better, Sion continued to ask worriedly, "If your body hasn't fully recovered, wouldn't going to the hospital still be a better option?" Meanwhile, Suno was glancing at his future-predicting glasses that were charging nearby. Seeing his device, he suddenly realized and thought to himself, "Ah, not good." Quickly responded to his friend and hurriedly pushed him out of his room. "Okay, I got it, you should go home now." To be more convincing, he even said that he was fine now to make Sion stop worrying and go home. Standing at the door, Sion was still worried, so he turned back and asked, then he received a firm reassurance from Suno, "Yeah, I'm really fine, so just go home," and then Suno even kindly reminded his friend to be careful. Before Suno's quick actions, Sion could only give a weak smile and agree with him, then promised to meet him at school tomorrow. After confirming that his friend had actually left his house, Suno finally breathed a sigh of relief. He had almost gotten into big trouble. At that moment, the system from the glasses informed him to put them on. When thinking about those glasses, he wondered to himself, "Am I really out of my mind, letting someone else into the house with these here?" And then, he put on his glasses and his manager appeared and announced, "Level up, congratulations, Chan Suno has reached level 6, and this made him so excited that he shouted, "Oh, yeah, let's go." And the manager continued to announce that you have a new skill and that tomorrow will be the worst day for you, advising you to watch it 15 minutes ahead and practice 15 times. Then he told Suno that he must review what happened today within 2 hours. Hearing that, he got excited because now he could review what had happened when he fainted, but contrary to his expectations, the manager informed him that he couldn't watch the parts he couldn't remember, so he had no choice but to look ahead to his own future. Just like before, he still insisted that tomorrow would be your worst day, and started showing you a glimpse of the next 20 minutes. A few seconds later, he was transported into a virtual space in the future, and he realized that the space seemed to be near his house. Suddenly, from behind you, someone is approaching with a knife. Made him quite surprised, and wondering what this is all about. Behind him, a person wearing a dark gray hoodie and a black cap is still gripping the knife that just stabbed him tightly. Then, he suddenly fled the scene, leaving the boy behind, who was collapsing in shock. Too scared, he took off his glasses and wondered if he was really going to be stabbed by that man. But in the end, why did that man secretly follow you in the middle of the night, then stab you with a knife and flee so quickly? Although worried for his life in that situation, Suno still comforted himself that all he needed was trust. "In your training, you'll be fine." And the next morning, at Guchan High School, at 9 a.m., Suno sat alone, glancing up at the classroom clock and thinking to himself, 9 p.m. tonight, in the alley on the way home. No matter what, I have to stop that knife, but that man is really fast, much faster than me, and I'm certain that even if I trained 15 times, I still couldn't catch him, and I still wonder who that man with his head fully covered really is. But then you also thought that if you wanted to know who that person was, you had no choice but to face him, and the things that had been predicted to happen would definitely happen to you. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Cian came to Sono and scared him to death with a box in his hand, and it made a loud bam, attracting most of the attention from other nearby classmates. Then, Cian happily held out the box and said, "You have a VR game console at home, right, Sono?" "I got the same one." In Cian's hand was a new game console box with a VR headset, and this left him in shock, eyes wide open, mouth agape, unable to speak. Suddenly, he shouted, "Did you secretly touch my stuff at my house yesterday?" And the sudden shout of Sono once again drew the attention of nearby classmates, who truly did not understand what was happening with these two friends, so they stopped their own conversations and turned to look at the two in confusion. Meanwhile, Cian remained calm in the face of his friend's panic. "Are you talking about a game console? Don't misunderstand me, Sono." Sono still didn't believe it, and he whispered to the friend he'd just met a day ago, "Anyway, you touched it," and Cian was adamant that he hadn't touched Sono's stuff at all. "No, why would I touch someone else's things without asking for permission?" Hearing that, Sono also sighed in relief. That's a relief, and Cian, as if just waiting for him to dispel that doubt, began eagerly asking questions about playing games with Sono. "If we play online, can we play together? So let's log in tonight. What game do you play?" Completely opposite to Cian's excitement, Sono was worried something might happen to his future seeing glasses, so he looked away and told Cian that his device was broken. It seemed like Cian would sadly accept not being able to play VR games with his new close friend, but he cheerfully said, "Then I'll buy you a new one." Seeing the enthusiasm and wealth overflowing from Cian, Sono coldly said, "You really have a lot of money, huh? You just buy whatever you want." Surprised by his attitude, Cian could only respond awkwardly, "No, I just wanted to get closer to you." After that, Sono coldly continued, "This is somewhat disrespectful, isn't it? You were at my house yesterday. I don't have parents and live alone in a small attic room." Although Cian is really rich, he doesn't look down on his friend just because of his difficult situation. So, Cian simply replied, "Yeah, so what?" Seeing that his friend still wouldn't change his mind, Sono continued to hurl hurtful words, "You're rich, think about whether it's fitting for you to hang out with someone like me. I think you should find someone more suitable to be friends with." It seemed like Cian would get angry and lash out at Sono with a string of insults, but he did the exact opposite of what he thought. After hearing those hurtful words, Cian calmly asked back, "How can that be?" This question caught Chano by surprise and he had to ask again, "What?" Seeing that he still didn't get his point, Cian clarified, "How can I get along with you?" As soon as he finished, Sono sighed and held his head, "Don't you have any other friends besides me?" Hearing this, Cian bowed his head, looking hurt, and hesitated to reveal that he hadn't had any real friends since he was a child, only people who took advantage of him. However, as soon as he finished his sentence, Cian returned to his calm demeanor and said, "But the moment I saw you, I already felt like you were just like me, because you don't have any friends either." Cian's sudden comment left Sono stunned and a bit annoyed, prompting him to blurt out a threat, "You punk, I'll hit you right now." But then, Sono also coughed a few times to regain his composure. "Anyway, right now, I don't have the time to make friends," but immediately after, he quickly changed his tone, shyly asking Cian if he could give him a share of his own. Hearing that, Cian was very surprised. "Shares? That's right, you have an account." Seeing his friend's astonishment, Sono slowly explained his intentions. "I'll tell you which items are worth investing in. If there's a profit, we'll split it in half. On the other hand, if it fails, I'll return the same amount to you." Hearing that idea from Cian hesitated a bit, but then he also happily agreed to the request of his new friend. "Just like that, when will you let me know?" "First, just get through today," you replied. Then the two returned to their schoolwork and finished when the sun had set. It was late at night when Sono dragged himself out of the house, went to the convenience store to buy some food. Before leaving, he wished the store employee good business. When Key stepped out of the convenience store, he looked around and sighed. The evening was still cold, wasn't it? I also want to become rich, and I want to install a water purifier at home. Every day at the convenience store, I always have to check which water is cheaper. And when you were about to continue speaking, a knife suddenly appeared from behind, stabbing straight into him. And that knife belonged to a strange man, wearing a black hood, and this scene was exactly like the preview he had seen the afternoon before. "I thought you had been stabbed and collapsed miserably in that alley, but you were still standing there, still fine, still without a single stab wound on your body. And at that moment, you suddenly lost your voice and said that you truly hated death. And then Suno calmly turned around, facing the masked man, smiled gently, and asked, "First time seeing protective clothing, huh? This morning, I had to receive an express delivery. I don't have any money, but because of you, I spent 300,000 won, so pay it back quickly." Before the sight of his target still standing there, unharmed in any way, the killer felt stunned and utterly shocked, stammering, how is this possible?" When Suno saw the confusion and surprise of the person who stabbed him in the back, he suddenly recalled his feelings when this incident was revealed last night. He had been just as shocked and stunned. Suddenly, the hooded man ran towards him, still gripping the knife tightly, cursing, "Damn it." Seeing him approach, Suno was not afraid but considered this the perfect moment. Suno took a bottle of water that he had just bought from a convenience store and used it to block the man's weapon. After the knife plunged into the water bottle, he quickly flicked it to the side, causing the murderer to fall in the direction the bottle tipped, the hand that had been holding the knife now forced to let go of the weapon. He accidentally let the knife drop, creating a loud clang that echoed through the alley where the two were standing. Seeing that the murderer had lost his weapon, Suno threw aside the pierced water bottle, and just as he was about to feel a sense of relief, suddenly, the man slowly pulled something out of his black coat, signaling to him that everything that had happened today was not truly over yet. In his pocket, the strange man was pulling out another knife. Then he suddenly remembered the remaining bottle of water he got from the buy one get one free promotion at the convenience store. He carefully, while still keeping a wary eye on the killer, immediately grabbed the bottle of water, and clearly, firmly announced, "You absolutely can't kill me here, so you'd better say it nicely." Then, immediately, he rushed towards the hooded man holding the knife with the water bottle placed in front of him to block his strike. "Get closer to him," he angrily shouted, "Who are you?" Then he ran straight to where the man was standing. Seeing you charging toward him with such determination, the man panicked, stepped back, and tried to turn and run, but unfortunately for him, he stepped on his own foot. And then he fell right in front of Suno. Seeing the situation doesn't seem favorable for their side, he cursed, "Damn it," and quickly ran into another alley. Seeing him dart away, Suno quickly chased after him. "Stop right there, bastard," he shouted. Then he kept chasing after the man into the depths of the alley. After a while chasing him, he realized the distance between them was growing, making him think to himself, "I'm really too slow." Although he had gone through 15 practice reviews, he still felt like everything had failed. But even so, in the end, you just have to keep trying. Suddenly, a voice came from the killer's headphones. "Make him slow down." When the voice from the headphones ended, he finally stopped and confirmed that he understood the order. Immediately after, he quickly turned around, staring intently at Suno. This action of his took the boy by surprise. He wondered why he was just standing there. Shouldn't he be running away continuously? While you were lost in your thoughts, the man, holding a knife in one hand, slowly approached Suno. Seeing him approaching, the boy felt quite scared and thought to himself, "There's no way this would happen during training, right? Why is he here? If he comes, I won't know what to do." You're scared, slowly backing away until you nearly touch the solid wall behind you. He keeps silent, slowly approaching you with his knife. Felt like there was no chance to fight back. You thought you should retreat first. But before he could take a step, he stumbled over a concrete block behind him and fell painfully to the ground. At that moment, the man took the opportunity to grab the knife and quickly approached him. Faced with this dire situation, he couldn't do anything. All he could do was curse, "Damn it." As soon as he finished speaking, he lunged at the boy like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, both hands gripping the knife tightly and aiming at Suno. Fortunately, the boy quickly grabbed the killer's wrist and successfully prevented the knife from reaching his face. In a dangerous situation like that, you were very scared, both hands still trying to resist the strong force of that man, muttering, "Yeah, I could die, it's fine. But at the very least, you should know which bastard you're dying because of," you said boldly, even in the face of death. The knife of the other person was almost touching his pupil, but he still focused on his initial goal, which was to find out who wanted to kill him. "Who are you, you bastard?" While the two were struggling with each other, a short-haired woman appeared behind them and called out, "What are you doing there?" Then she revealed herself as a police officer and told the man to drop the knife, and if he didn't comply, she would shoot. "If you don't want to get shot, drop the knife," she continued to demand that the man in the black hood drop his weapon, and he hesitated, glanced sideways at her, slowly lowering the knife. Then he ran off down the alley, leaving Suno struggling to catch his breath after holding it for so long, and the police officer who was about to chase after him. But then she decided not to chase and sat down to support Suno, constantly asking, "Suno, are you okay?" Afterward, she helped him sit down on a wide chair outside his house. Once they were both seated and settled, the girl, Yi Chi, whom he had met a few days earlier, said, "After work, I wondered if I should talk to you, and luckily, on my way over, I saw you in danger and managed to stop him in time." Then she anxiously continued questioning him. "You really didn't see his face, but can you guess who it was?" In response to that question, he had no answer to give her, and he silently blamed himself. "I practiced 15 times yesterday, but that guy never turned his back to that position, so there's no way he could attack back." Thinking about it, he got even angrier with himself, his fists clenched, blaming himself. During the time of Pai Vayu, he had never once practiced. Although he was quite upset with himself, he still held back and responded with a light smile that he felt fine when she said, "It seemed like you were still in shock and couldn't say much." Right after that, he took off the protective jacket, making Yi Chi curious and immediately asked, "By the way, what are you wearing? How did you know this was going to happen?" Being asked like that, he didn't know how to answer, so he could only come up with a random reason to hesitantly respond to her. "That's because I'm like my dad, I get a little scared sometimes, so I have a habit of wearing stuff like that." Seeing this, the police officer turned to sigh in relief, "Fortunately for you." Then she seriously said, "Anyway, tomorrow when I go to work, I will review all the CCTV in this area, so I think I can find the culprit for you." After saying that, she put her hand in her jacket pocket and took something out. It was a small white envelope carefully sealed. Then she placed it in front of Suno and said, "Also, the other day you mentioned something to me about money, right? And it seems like last time, I might have given you less than the living expenses." When Suno saw the envelope full of money, an idea immediately came to him. Excitedly, he turned to Yi Chi and said, "Sister, have you really never thought about investing in stocks or real estate?" Hearing this familiar question, she scolded him, "Shoo, not that again. You almost got yourself killed just now." But she couldn't help but wonder, how could such words come out of a kid like Suno? Before her skeptical attitude, Suno, instead of offering further explanation, still stubbornly refused to speak and even raised his voice, pleading with her, "Why is it like this? Just trust me this one time, no matter what, I will find a way to get the money." Facing her younger brother's unreasonable plea, she raised her voice in response, "No matter if you win 10 or 100 times, you'll lose in the end and end up with nothing. This is a gambling game, Suno, that's why I didn't even agree to start." In response to her firm refusal, Suno could only pretend to cry and beg her. "Then you suddenly remembered. When you were cornered by that killer. When he was about to grab the knife and lunge forward to kill you. Only then did you realize how scared you were." Then he calmed down and told her that investing in stocks really had no chance of failure at all. Seeing him looking quite down, she took out a device from her pocket and handed it to him, which made him ask, "Sister, what is this?" "That is a taser." Since she already had one at home for self-defense, she gave it to Suno so that he could feel safer now that he could protect himself better with that weapon. Then she calmly explained that she was worried because something always happened with her brother. Then she put on her shoes and left. Before leaving, she gave him one last reminder, "No matter what, make sure to lock the door before you rest, Suno." When thay ko de roy di, ka di veo na kwa min, va luk nai de la 11 geo roy. Even though it was quite late, he insisted on staying up to review today's situation, the moment when that knife-wielding man wanted to kill him. Noi roy ka deo mat kin veo va bat dao di veo the gioi mo fong cho tin hong noi kap ham ne, va ka tam gi, min phi tu tu tim hu rut kuok nuoi dan ong kam dao muon jiat ka I la ten now, kai ka zem den don han dung lai roy tien toi gon ka de cho dung video, va tam sui don, han ta ko vi chow tam 1 met 8. Va ten nai ko chut gi du jong. But he still couldn't figure out who he resembled. Then his eyes shifted to the man's shoes, just a pair of plain beige-brown sneakers, and he didn't really know much about the brand either. Then, you look at the upper part of him, he's wearing a shirt, hat, and mask, and all of those are black, which still leaves you confused about who he is. Plus, since it's pitch dark at night, you can't clearly identify who he is. Then when he turned to the man's side, he noticed a pair of white wireless earbuds. Suddenly, he realized that the guy had originally planned to run away, but at that moment, he stopped and calmly approached him, making him wonder if there was some kind of command in his earpiece that made him suddenly stop and rush toward him. Then, when he shifted the camera to other parts, and Suno saw a certain sign that made him freeze. At his ankle, there is a tattoo of a dark cloud with 3 lightning bolts, and this truly surprised him. But no matter how many times you review it, those are all the traits you can find in him today, and this makes you anxious, wondering if it's possible to catch the culprit with just these clues. Then you have no choice but to set those traits aside and continue using the Viru glasses to foresee the terrible events of the next day. And he was taken to the next day, during a class lesson at school. At first, the teachers and classmates were still normal, and this made him think that tomorrow was nothing too special. When you were transported, it was around 3 or 4 p.m. Because everything was so ordinary, you secretly used your phone during the class of an older male teacher, and the first thing you opened was the homepage of the stock app you were investing in. Then you thought to yourself, should I try to start by exploring this stock app? And he started learning by memorizing the top 3 most invested categories. Then he called someone. And he dialed Sharon's number, waited until his friend picked up, then cheerfully started, "Sharon, are you sure you can trade stocks?" And your friend immediately agreed. Then you happily asked Sharon if we could get to class a little earlier tomorrow morning. See, Suno's voice seemed excited. Sion immediately agreed with his request, and the next morning, at his school, 2 people met at 7 o'clock, much earlier than their class time, so they would have enough time to discuss things privately. When they met, Suno immediately asked Sion about many things related to stocks, and he also asked Sion to reveal some of the most invested items, Sansambio and Bobo Pharmaceuticals. What else, Sharon, Chansoriti After having noted down some investment items, he gave the notes to Sion, and after thinking for a while, Sion asked, "In a bit, as soon as the stock opens, I'll buy this, and around 3 p.m., I'll sell everything, right? If there's profit, we'll split it in half, and if you lose, I'll pay you back the same amount." Suno firmly replied. Then he immediately asked back, "How much can you put down?" "Too much won't work, how about 100 million? Sharon replied. And this huge amount left Suno stunned, and he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Damn, this rich lunatic, 100 million is way too much for him, especially if Sharon suffers a loss." But ignoring the huge amount of money just offered, Suno pondered and told his friend, saying it again, "It's like I'm borrowing your money to do this. First of all, today you should lend me 10 million won." After the two finished their discussion, it was time to enter the classroom. While waiting, both Sharon and Suno were both quite nervous. Finally, Dong Ho de Diem for Gio Chiu, Lathoi John Tan Hok Kwa Tu Nuoi. After that, the two friends arranged to meet in the men's restroom. Sharon shouted in disbelief, then pointed the phone toward Suno and continued, "Just like you said, Suno, everything sold out and we made 3 million won. Take your friend's iPhone 15. Suno was extremely surprised and delighted because he had finally done it. Suddenly, Sharon, who was standing opposite him, asked, "But how did you know that?" Not wanting his friend to find out about it, Suno hesitated and replied, well, I've been studying stock investments for a long time." Finishing his sentence, he could only smile awkwardly when facing Sharon. Suddenly, Sharon exclaimed, "If that's the case, what a pity," leaving him a bit confused. "What do you mean?" Sharon continued, "If I put in 100 million, I could earn 30 million won, right?" Hearing his friend say that, Suno felt regretful. "Yeah, why didn't I just put the whole 100 million into stocks? But anyway, as promised, I'll give you half, which is 1.5 million won," and Xian immediately wondered where Suno would deposit the money, and Suno quickly replied, "I don't have a bank account." So, Sharon only had one option left, which was to give all the money he had with him today to Suno, and tomorrow he would bring the rest to him. Seeing his friend naturally hand him 50,000 won bills, Suno grew concerned and asked, 500,000 won? Do you have your card with you? Carrying this much cash is dangerous. Noticing the worry on Suno's face, Sion chuckled and asked, "Are you worried about me?" "Thanks." Facing the thank you, Suno grabbed the money and quickly stuffed it into his uniform pocket, then coldly said, "Why would I worry about a diamond gold spoon like you?" Meanwhile, Sharon thought about today's outcome and excitedly exclaimed, "This is really interesting, almost everything dropped in value today, only what you took a picture of went up." Then he excitedly asked Suno, "Can we do this tomorrow as well?" The question caught Suno off guard. Seeing his confusion, Sharon immediately explained, "The added category, can you find out about it tomorrow? If you know it, then let's try with 100 million, Sharon said cheerfully. After that, since it was already quite late after school, the two decided to say goodbye and head home. By the time they got home, it was already dark. The time was then almost 8 o'clock, and Suno is placing the envelope that she, the police officer, gave him the other day, along with a stack of 50,000 won bills next to each other. Then he picked up the envelope containing his living expenses, and thinking back to when he sat across from her, she was handing him that envelope and reminding him about the living expenses she had underpaid him. At that moment, when he saw her envelope, he hastily asked her about investing in stocks or coins, and was immediately scolded by her. Then he argued back and begged her. The girl, when facing her dear younger brother, still maintained a strict attitude as she lectured him to wake up. Breaking away from the stream of memories, he placed the envelope on the ground, then took the stack of money that Sharon had given him earlier today, and recalled the moment when he and Sharon talked about stocks in the men's restroom. Before the two said goodbye, Sharon excitedly asked him, "Can this stock do it again tomorrow?" And at that moment, he felt a bit confused about the question, so Shuren explained whether the category the two invested in could increase the next day or not. And Xian also asked if he could foresee this, and said that if Sun-Oh knew, he would propose investing 100 million won in the items he chose. Just completed the translation of your provided text according to the given guidelines. Fresh out of his memories, Sun-Oh fell into deep thoughts as he held the stack of 50,000 won bills, wondering to himself, should I keep investing in this or should I stop, or should I keep going? When you were struggling with the decision of whether to continue investing a huge amount of money in stocks, the glasses nearby were fully charged, notifying you to put them on. Thanks to that notification, you were able to break free from your thoughts and calmly put on the glasses. When the device was successfully activated, your manager appeared and said, Sun-Oh at level 6 has already surpassed level 5, and this announcement left you with a series of questions. Why such a high level? Depending on your experience, the level will be determined, your manager responded, and this made you furious. It's really outrageous. Hasn't it been a long time since you've had a comfortable day like this? While you're losing your mind because your level isn't increasing, your system remains emotionless, notifying you that your skill can be used immediately. It will predict the worst that will happen tomorrow and ask you to preview it within 10 minutes and practice 10 times. Then, as usual, the system will show you today, and when that manager was still speaking, you got annoyed and snapped, just skip it, just show it beforehand. Upon hearing the command, his system immediately activated the preview skill, and the glasses transported him to a completely unfamiliar place. Where is this? The place he was just transferred to is an unfinished construction site. When your mind hasn't fully processed what's happening, a sudden scream erupts behind you. Help me. Then, to satisfy his curiosity, he walked toward the source of the sound, unconsciously asking, who is it? Immediately, the person who had just screamed responded, it's Go-Sung-Bum. When he reached the place where Go-Sung-Bum had called out, he finally saw him tied to a chair with multiple layers of green ropes, and his head covered by a black plastic bag. Seeing this scene, Sun-Oh hesitated before approaching Sung-Bum, carefully removing the plastic bag from his head. Feeling liberated, he hurriedly gasped for air and then struggled to ask, who are you? Facing Sung-Bum, he recalled the moment when he and Xian were cornered in the house, because Sung-Bum and his crew had seen something while passing by his room. At that moment, Sung-Bum had noticed Xian's wallet and made a teasing remark, your wallet looks pretty thick, And then he slowly put his arm around Xian's shoulder, slyly asking, you're holding something heavy, aren't you? Share some with us, kid. Back to reality, he realized who this Sung-Bum was. He was the one who had robbed Xian the other day. At the same time, when he saw Sun-Oh, he immediately recognized him. Suddenly, he screamed, claiming that you had kidnapped him. Damn it, you crazy guy, you kidnapped me because you got beaten up, right? Ongmin beat you, but I didn't hit you. He was terrified, but still stubbornly insisted that he was innocent and was convinced that you kidnapped him to get revenge for what happened the other day. Contrary to the panicked, easily agitated attitude of Sung-Bum, he was extremely calm, standing in front of him, pointing one finger at himself and saying, you said I kidnapped you, right? In response to Sun-Oh's provocative attitude, he became even more agitated. Then who else would it be if not you? Feeling falsely accused of kidnapping, he immediately raised his voice in protest. I have no reason to do such a thing. Despite his assertion, the man simply ignored it and threatened him, if you don't untie me, you'll feel really frustrated. Facing Sung-Bum's stubbornness, he had no choice but to untie him, and to cut through the 10 layers of tough ropes. With no knife nearby, he could only break a glass bottle nearby to create a sharp object to sever the ropes. When you approached the place where Sung-Bum was tied up, you had to exclaim that the person who kidnapped Sung-Bum really tied a lot of ropes, and this made it quite difficult for you as you tried to free him. While Sun-Oh was struggling to cut the ropes to free Sung-Bum, he sat on the chair, screaming at you to cut faster. After a few minutes of using the broken bottle to cut the rope, finally, one rope snapped, and he continued to persistently cut the remaining ropes. While Sun-Oh was trying to untie Sung-Bum from the ropes, Sung-Bum hastily, impatiently, scolded him, why are you so slow, damn it. And when Sung-Bum was freed, he immediately stood up, pushing towards Sun-Oh, causing him to fall backward by inertia. The unexpected action left Sun-Oh speechless, only able to stammer, thinking he would fall onto the cold cement ground, but behind him, a foundation suddenly rose from the earth. And Sung-Bum made him fall onto that nail. Blood kept pouring out of him, his face still showing a shocked, fearful expression, and a bit pale as if drained of every drop of blood. When going through this situation, even though it was just a simulation, he felt as if it really happened in real life. That's why he held his wound with both hands in the simulation and screamed in pain in his room. Too scared and stunned, he immediately took off his glasses, horrified by the simulated situation, his mouth panting heavily, along with efforts to speak out, save, I saved him, but he repaid kindness with vengeance. Then he coughed, struggling to regain his composure. After a moment of calm, he firmly grabbed his VR glasses and put them on, ready for the preview session. At this moment, he was transported to the same space and time as before, and he ran towards Sungbum, who had a black plastic bag over his head. Then he used his bare foot to kick directly at Sungbum, and this action accidentally created a loud thud that echoed throughout the ruined room awaiting reconstruction. After kicking Sungbum to get his attention, he spoke up, "If you don't want to get beaten to death, then answer clearly." At this moment, Sungbum still didn't realize that the person who had kicked him was the boy, so he politely replied, "Yes, yes. Among the things you've done today, is there anything that warrants such revenge?" Sano asked Sungbum, and he hesitated to reply, "Bad deeds, huh? I stole about $1,000,000 from the kid at school, and now I have to suffer like this." "Who is that kid?" you ask sharply. "Cian, right? Anyway, I will return the money, please, save me," Sungbum answered with what seemed like a sincere plea. When hearing about this familiar event, he thought to himself, "I kidnapped this guy because he extorted money from Cian? Unbelievable." Though a bit surprised by his future self, he still needed to check and observe more carefully. Thinking was doing, he slowly approached the spot where Sungbum was tied to the chair. It seemed Sungbum sensed his approach and curled up in fear, stammering, Don't come here." Seeing Songbum so timid, the guy got closer and closer, his face almost touching his, continuing to probe. "You drank alcohol?" "What, yes, I did have a little, sorry," he stammered and admitted. Suddenly, Ka put both hands on Han to threaten him, but at the same time, Ka did so to check a few things on Han. After that, Ka whispered to Han about human trafficking, which made Han start to feel scared, cowering on the chair binding Han. "Organ trafficking? Is that what you mean? Please save me, please." After a quick examination of the upper body, Sano thought, "No matter how you look at it, there's nothing on this guy that resembles the killer from the other day." Then, he moved to his ankle, grabbing it with one hand and lifting it up. And when you checked his ankle, you suddenly noticed something that made you pause for a few seconds. You kept holding his ankle, twisting it left and right, wondering what that mysterious mark on his ankle was. Until the next day, at his school. In the school hallway, Sungbum is walking along the corridor, holding his phone and calling Ong Min, asking him, "What's been going on with you lately? Why can't I see your face clearly after you got chewed up? Are you having fun with those kids on the run? Now I'm off to make some pocket money. How did those kids in the game room have so much money a few days ago? Have they ever been caught and punished? I found out the kid's name and class already. It is a first-year 7th grade student, Kansian." As soon as he finished speaking, Sungbum immediately flung open the door of Class 7, strode in confidently, and casually called out Sion's name. At that moment, Sion was sitting in his place doing homework. When he noticed the presence of Sungbum, he was a bit nervous and asked, "Me?" "Sure, here is the translation following your provided instructions." "Yes, that's you, come out for a bit." Seeing the prey not moving, he gestured with his index finger for you to go outside with him. And Kanasian obediently followed the words of Sungbum, walking out of the classroom with him. Once they were outside and standing at the corner of the hallway, Sian finally voiced his question, "Why is it like this? Why is what like this?" he asked back angrily. "Last time, you were lucky, right? A man passing by helped you." He kept closing in on Cian and cornered him against the wall. "I have to admit, that man was really strong. Since I was in so much pain, my hands are still not fully strong yet." Then he grabbed his arm and twisted it a few times as if preparing to strike, while his fierce face remained locked onto Cian. "Back in the day when I used to exercise, my shoulder got injured, and it's flaring up again, so it hurts a lot." His eyes never left him. Then, he found a reason to convince him to give him the money. "Because of you, I got hurt. Shouldn't you be paying for my medical bills? Take out your wallet, kid." Hearing his reason and request, Cian thought it made sense and immediately handed his wallet to Sungbum. Immediately, he snatched the wallet from Cian's hand, then jokingly said, "You bastard, I like your attitude." Then he opened the black wallet, and inside was a stack of 50,000 won bills. Seeing so much money, he was excited. "You really are from a wealthy family, aren't you?" Then he took a portion of the stack of money and put it in his pocket, then told Cian, "So here's the deal, each day I'll take half of the money in your wallet." Then he continued, like a bully, "So starting tomorrow, if you don't bring money, you'll get scolded." Faced with Sungbum, Cian was very weak and could only bow his head and accept the unreasonable demand. Seeing him agree unconditionally, he cheerfully said, "Haha, I really like you. If anyone bothers you at school, just tell me, I'll beat them all up, because I'm Go Sungbum, and when people hear that name, they're scared. And he offered Cian a small privilege to compensate for his financial loss. Suddenly, there was a voice calling Sunbae from behind Sungbum, which surprised him and made him turn around to look back. The call belonged to Suno. Cheon Suno, what's wrong, do you want to rush in and kill me like last time? Facing Songbyum, he appeared nervous, clasped his hands together, slightly bowed, and said, no, senior, last time I was really out of my mind, that's why I dared to do that. When he bent down, he realized that shoes of Sungbum got untied, and taking this opportunity, he decided to bend down and tie them for him as a form of apology. Seeing your enthusiasm, he let you tie his shoelaces as an apology. While you were bending down to tie them, he asked, it seems like after getting hit by Omin, you've come to your senses, huh? Alright then, go ahead, tie them up for me. When he agreed, you looked pleased and exclaimed, yes, senior, it's an honor for me. While tying his shoelaces, he took the chance to feel his calf muscles and said, wow, your muscles are really strong, this is no joke. Hearing all the praise, he snorted arrogantly and said, I used to be in the track and field club. And while he was massaging Sungbum's leg, his pant leg was pulled up slightly, revealing a black lightning tattoo, a feature Suno had noticed when reviewing the simulation to identify who had tried to kill him. When seeing that familiar tattoo, he didn't rush to shout, but silently pondered. On his ankle, there was a fleeting tattoo. After finally finding what he had been searching for all this time, he quickly finished tying his shoelaces, and when he informed him that his laces were tied, he turned his back and walked away, saying over his shoulder, all right, kid, remember to listen in the future, leaving Cian awkwardly standing next to Suno, who was pretending to bow in farewell. Sure, here is the translated text. At that moment, he thought to himself, of course, the night I'm about to be killed, the one who tried to kill me with a knife was him. At that moment, Sungbum remained calm and walked on, unaware that a crucial feature of his had been exposed. That night, at a bar, everyone had left, leaving only Sungbum, completely drunk, babbling on the phone. Damn, I drank 3 bottles of soju all by myself today. It's only because it's me that I could handle that much, he proudly boasted about his drinking capacity to the person on the other end of the line. And then he bragged, among the juniors at school, I've already caught a pumpkin, so later, I'll treat you all to a few meals, isn't it Kanasayan? The person on the phone immediately asked. He confirmed with the person, then slowly walked out of the bar, still mumbling on the phone. They told me not to go out like this anymore today, but I can't. While he was still happily chatting with his buddies on the phone, behind him, a dark figure was rushing towards him like lightning, and the man in black took the stun gun and shot at Sungbum. He collapsed to the ground from the electric shock, and the person who just delivered the electric shock was none other than Suno. When Han Ta lay down, Ka was somewhat relieved but still had to drag his large body into a hidden corner because Ka couldn't let this be exposed to others. Then he moved his body to the nearby unfinished building. Because the man was too heavy, he had to grab a nearby cart and place him on it. His mind kept racing. That night, the man had talked to someone through a wireless earpiece, and from that moment on, everything hadn't gone as he had predicted. Who is that person, and why are they trying to kill me? While thinking, he had to carry Sungbum's heavy body onto the cart, and he struggled for a while before he could pull part of his body up. And he thought to himself that finally, today everything would be illuminated. After a struggle, he finally got Sungbum into the ruined building. And at this moment, he was tightly bound by several ropes, and after a while, he also woke up, opening his eyes and realizing that he was tightly bound, unable to move his hands, and his head was covered with a black plastic bag. He panicked and screamed, "Who is it? Please let me go." Meanwhile, Suno still had a black mask on and slowly approached Sungbum, who was tied to the chair, his mind racing with thoughts. Last night, after 10 rounds of practice and training, he tried every way to make him confess the reason for stabbing him and reveal the mastermind behind it. Yes, in the simulations, you threatened, hit, and even torturing him, but this guy insists he knows nothing from start to finish. So if you hand him over to the police now without any evidence, it would be useless. After thinking all night, he suddenly realized. At that moment, he approached Sungbum, grabbed his tattooed ankle, causing him to panic and scream in fear. And when he saw that tattoo, he wondered, what if someone else also had the same tattoo? So you immediately questioned him. Why do you have a tattoo on your ankle? He asked fearfully while your hand was still gripping his ankle. Is something wrong? Do you hate tattoos? I'll remove it right away. Seeing him deliberately avoid the question, he shouted, answer directly. This made him shrink back, stammering, I was in the track team back in middle school, and everyone in our group had that tattoo. Hearing that, he suddenly cursed silently when his guess was correct, then he continued to interrogate Sungbum. How many people also have this tattoo? He hesitated to answer. About more than 10 people. List the names you requested, but he hesitated. Suddenly, your phone rang. It was Kansion, your friend, so you told him to wait for a moment. Then you hit accept on the video call. When the screen appeared, he was shocked. Sion was kidnapped by someone and beaten until his nose bled, with his mouth taped shut. Seeing his friend in a dangerous situation, he had to abandon his plan to question Sungbum about the tattoo and the incident from the previous day. He quickly rushed to rescue his friend, reminding Sungbum to stay put before leaving, though it wasn't really necessary since Sungbum was already tightly bound and couldn't move anyway. While running outside, he kept looking at his phone screen, following the situation with Sion, and then anxiously shouted, "Hey, what's happening to you?" On the phone screen, Sion was in agony as the kidnapper yanked the tape from his mouth, causing him to scream in pain. When the tape was removed, Sion screamed in fear, "Help me, Suno." Then you explained to Suno, "I was worried because you didn't answer the phone, so I went to your house, but suddenly someone brought me here." Hearing that, Suno got even more worried and asked, "Who is it? Where are you?" Then suddenly, the kidnapper revealed himself, and this caught him completely off guard. The person was also wearing a hat, a black hoodie and a black mask, just like the one who tried to kill you last time. Seeing that you didn't react, he began to speak. "Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. If you call the police, I'll kill him right here. I know you can find us, come at this exact time tomorrow. If you can't find this place, your friend dies, that's it." Facing that demand, he cursed, "Hey, bastard. Don't let you finish." He already hung up, leaving you even more panicked and having to rush to find your friend immediately. At that moment, where Sungbum was tied up, he kept talking and begging in vain, "I'm sorry, when will you untie me? I really need to use the bathroom." After about 30 minutes, Suno ran back to his house. Just got home, he didn't care and slammed the door open. Collapsed, panting heavily, struggling to speak, "I can't even call the police. Can I find Sion's location by tomorrow? How would I know?" Then you suddenly realized something. He turned to look at the fully charged VR glasses next to the bed and wondered, could someone know about his ability to see the future? Meanwhile, in a spacious apartment isolated from the city, Sion is being held in a room, trying to make a sound, but all that comes out are incomprehensible noises. His mouth is taped shut, and his body and arms are tightly bound together, leaving him unable to move. Sitting across from him were two strange men, one skinny with black hair, smoking a cigarette, annoyed by the sounds he was making, so he ordered the other man to put more tape on Sion's mouth, and next to him, the man who had just received the order was quite fat, with light blonde hair with a faded spot on the top of his head, casually putting pieces of chips into his mouth. Immediately, the chubby man stuck more tape over his mouth, which made him even more terrified. He tried to avoid the man, and at this moment, 2 streams of blood continued to flow from Sion's nose, making the man say, "I didn't hit you that hard, why are you bleeding so much?" Seeing Sion's terrified, bloodless expression, the other man joked, "Damn, this kid is so cute." Then, the thin man turned to ask the man in black who had taken Sion's phone and threatened Suno. Notably, this person had his pants rolled up, revealing a tattoo similar to Sungbum's and the one who intended to kill Suno. "Hey, Ong Min, is this really okay?" The question made Ong Min, who was already troubled, think even more. Then the thin man continued, "We were just going to teach him a lesson, isn't this a bit too much? If something goes wrong, we're all dead." As soon as he finished speaking, he received an immediate order from Mr. Min, demanding that he shut his mouth. Then, Ong Min stared into the void, expressionless, and growled, "I already. Luan Kwa Sao Roy, Bei Gio, Ong Min Kong Kon Duong Lui Nua 6 Han Da Di Kwa Sao Veo Trong Vu Vik Ne, Va Han Chin Laku De Cam Dao Din Jayat Chet Suno Veo Dem Hamai." Then Ong Min recalled a few days earlier. He arrived at a luxurious hotel and was tasked with killing Suno. He was provided with 2 small knives, along with some photos of Suno, and the man who gave him the assignment had already deposited 5 million won in advance. Upon completion, Ong Min would receive another 5 million for fulfilling the contract. And the person who gave this task to Ong Min was a wealthy uncle, his hand adorned with a gold ring set with a bright red gemstone, sitting on a luxurious cushioned chair, arrogantly smoking and giving orders, "Tomorrow, go and stab the guy in the photo for me, and to be safe, take both knives with you." When Min saw that the target to kill was Suno, his eyes widened. Then he remembered the moment he kicked Suno Va into the vending machine. At that time, due to the urging to kill Suno's uncle, he became furious and acted uncontrollably. He ruthlessly kicked the boy, while Suno lay at his feet without a word of complaint but boldly taunted him to kill him. Seeing you continue to provoke, he went mad, then screamed, "I'll kill you and send you to hell, you bastard." Returning to reality, you hold up a picture of Suno and say to the man, "I know this kid, he was my junior in middle school. Hearing that, the man sneers and says, a guy like you who got expelled from school has juniors too? Anyway, if you do well on this, I'll let you and your boys into our group, he said while pressing his cigarette into the ashtray on the table. Then he added, what's the point of tricking the neighbor kids? Immediately, Ong-min replied, yes boss, thank you. He responded while a mountain of questions was building up inside him, but then Ong-min bravely voiced his concern. But why did you have to stab him? Don't you think that question is ridiculous? The old man retorted immediately. Like I would know, you idiot, that's an order from above, they told us to stab, so we stab, that uncle shouted, and grabbed the nearby glass ashtray and threw it at Min's head. You said you've been following him, right? Quick, then stab him and make your escape, he said as Ong-min was still stunned by what had just happened. His head, hit by the ashtray, was now bleeding profusely, with drops of blood slowly trickling down his face, making him look quite terrifying. Suddenly, the uncle threw something at him, and Min quickly caught it and asked, what is this? Mr. Min kept asking without taking a moment to think, and the other man got furious and yelled at him, you want to get beaten up again? These are wireless earbuds, put them on. After the flashback ended, he started worrying again about the day he faced Suno. A few days earlier, that bastard Chan Suno had known he would approach, even wore a bulletproof vest, and the police also conveniently showed up. Is there someone backing him up? Why would they do that? Omin thought again and couldn't help but wonder. Suddenly, he became afraid, thinking that Chan Suno might find this place and expose them. It was too suspicious. He thought he had been careless, even considering turning himself in. Meanwhile, at the abandoned construction site, Sung Bum was still tightly bound in his original position. His arms were exhausted after struggling for a while, but it seemed his mouth wasn't tired at all. He kept screaming in the silence of the deserted site, sorry, is anyone there? I'm so scared. Suddenly, he heard a sound, a sign of a human. Sung Bum joyfully shouted, hey, over here, there's someone here. Sano de quay tiaro lai cho Sung Bum sao motiquoc che vi na de Manhwa, kabin tin byuk toi cho Sung Bum, lan lung noi, tau na thay roy, tang cho, jong noi quen thuok keen han tamung hut, ha, kai tang, a, kong la nuoi luk nema. Then he bluntly made his demand, tell me something and I'll let you go. Seeing himself about to be freed from this place, Sung Bum eagerly replied, ask me anything. Then tell me the location of those Kim Ung-mins. 30 minutes later, at the hideout of the Ong-min group, they were waiting for their late-night snack to arrive. Meanwhile, the skinny one started feeling sleepy, while the chubby one complained, wondering when the food would get there. Seeing his friend so eager to eat, Tang Ge said, it's only been 10 minutes since we ordered, you guy. Then Tang Bio replied, I'm hungry, and I'm so tired I'm about to die here. While waiting, suddenly, there was a call from outside the door, delivery here. Immediately, Tang Bio Dao Vang without thinking ran quickly to open the door. Quick, isn't it? He said excitedly, but when he opened the door, he only saw a man wearing a full-face helmet and dressed in black, looking very mysterious and not at all like a delivery person. Suddenly, the man took off his helmet, revealing no one other than our main character, Suno. At this moment, he was quite furious, gripping a taser tightly in one hand and boldly saying, didn't you tell me to come find you? The bastard dog. He shot the gun aimed at the fat chin of Mr. Min's chubby henchman. Hearing the fat boy's cry, the other henchman hurriedly ran toward the door. When he got there, he saw the fat boy lying sprawled out in front of the house. Seeing the danger, Tangay cautiously clenched his fists, then dashed straight towards the door, shouting, what the hell is this? Suno was expected to take that punch, but he dodged just in time and rushed straight into the house, while the skinny guy kept his fist up and punched into thin air. When it saw it had missed the punch, it turned around and saw Suno swinging a helmet at it. Just like that, Tang Ge took a full, painful blow from the helmet, and the two Dan M collapsed to the ground. After taking down two henchmen, he quickly headed to the room where Cian was being held. Without hesitation, he flung the door open and shouted anxiously, Cian, are you okay? In the meantime, the fat boy woke up and said, you jerk, Kim Ong-min, do something to help. In that room, Ong-min had encountered Suno. He didn't dare move, terrified, thinking like a madman, he's really here, we'll never win, he knows everything. He knows everything, meaning he's invincible, damn it. Ong-min was so scared that he screamed. Suddenly, he picked up the fan and furiously smashed the glass window. Then, he jumped straight down from the high floor, completely disregarding death. With his bare feet, he ran for his life away from that place. Behind him, Suno was trying to catch up, constantly shouting, hey, Kang Ong-min, stop right there, don't come here, Ong-min said fearfully. Behind, Suno kept calling him, Kim Ong-min, listen to me first. Seeing Ong-min still running tirelessly, Suno started to feel exhausted, but he was determined to catch him no matter what, because according to what he had seen earlier, the worst thing that could happen to him today was, the name Kim Ong-min will die in front of you. So you yelled a warning at him, don't run out there, if you keep running, you'll die. That warning from you made him stop, eyes wide open looking at you. I will die. How do you know? Meanwhile, Sano had just stopped, panting after the chase earlier. When he finally caught his breath, he pointed towards the main road and explained to him that right after this alley is an 8-lane road. If you keep running like that, you'll get hit. Instead of saying thank you, Ong-min spat out curses. How could you know that, you bastard? As soon as he finished speaking, you immediately demanded that he tell you who told him to bring the knife to kill you. Who do you work for, huh? Your question put pressure on him, making him even more furious. Damn it, you know everything but don't know that? Seeing him about to lose it, he suddenly remembered that the preview screen only showed him up to this point, so he didn't know what would happen next. Therefore, the wisest choice he could make right now was to let Ong-min calm down. So, he slowly stepped back and told him that they could pretend today never happened. Then you started negotiating with him. You wouldn't report to the police about his attempt to stab you or about Sion being kidnapped by him. You would just return to Mr. Min's place and rescue Sion. Hearing this suggestion from Sano, it seemed he also wanted to go along with the idea, so he cursed under his breath, damn it, if I let you go like this, he'll kill me. And Sano noticed an important detail in what he just said, who is he? Realizing he had accidentally revealed a part, he then just kept silent. Seeing Ong-min show no intention of killing him, he seized this opportunity to find out what he wanted to know. Then, he slowly and cautiously stepped closer to him and persuaded him to speak. Tell me, I'll help you. You sensed it too, didn't you? You know I have the ability. Earlier, you ran away because you were scared to death. Suddenly, he yelled, I got it, shut your mouth for me, damn it, I'm talking to Chansano, you bastard. Hearing that, he thought the other was furious because of what he said, but when he heard the latter part, he began to be confused and asked him who he was talking to. Realizing he had spoken too loudly, the other pretended as if nothing had happened. At this point, you finally noticed he was wearing wireless earbuds, so you asked him to hand over the wireless earphones, and you were certain that he was taking orders from someone through this device. Hearing your request, he hesitated a little, but suddenly, something strange happened to his headphones. Both sides were heating up, making him terrified and frozen in place, with only a cry for help escaping his lips. Seeing him plead for help, Sano found it strange but also worried, not knowing what was happening to Ong-min, and decided to step forward to assist him. Suddenly, just a few seconds later, both of his earphones exploded, leaving him extremely shocked. Blood started spurting from both his ears, with some drops splashing onto his face, and he still hadn't recovered from the terrifying scene that had just unfolded before his eyes. Ong-min was instantly killed by an explosion caused by a wireless earphone, his upper body now completely burned as he fell backward. Facing this scene, Sano was extremely shocked. He stepped back and stumbled, his mouth agape, unable to close, and he unconsciously let out a broken scream. After today, he would probably be haunted for life by the image of Ong-min burning in front of him. The next morning, he and Sion went to the city police station. Two people, after reporting the incident last night, sat together on the bench outside the station and had a heart-to-heart. Are you okay? Sion asked when he noticed Sano didn't look so good. But he just sighed and replied, you were just kidnapped and beaten badly, you should worry about yourself first. After speaking, he gazed thoughtfully at the still hot cup of coffee in his hand, while Sion tried to explain himself. You looked worse than I did, so I asked. When Sion finished speaking, he got a bit emotional and immediately continued, the first time something like this happens and nothing's wrong? That's really strange, right, Sion? My dad's funeral wasn't that long ago, so why do these things keep happening to me? He asked, choking up. Seeing how emotional you are, Sion suggested an idea to help you shift your feelings. Sono, how about you come over to my place and sleep? Hearing Sion's suggestion, you were surprised and asked back, your place. Then, Sion said that he had talked to his father yesterday, and his father would hire a bodyguard for him. Earlier, when the police questioned Sion, they also mentioned that recently, Sano had faced many dangers. Then he turned to Sano and said, staying with me is better than living alone in the attic floor, right? In response to Sion's question, he asked for some time to think it over. While the two were talking, from behind, Sion, the police officer whom Sono had met a few days earlier, was approaching them. After a few greetings, she announced that she had received a call from the hospital informing her that Kim Ong-min had just passed away on the operating table. Hearing that Ong-min did not make it, Sono was devastated. What on earth were those headphones about those headphones, she said the police would send them to the National Forensic Agency for investigation, and she also informed the officer who planned to investigate those involved with Kim Ong-min based on the testimony of the homeless kids. Then she turned to his friend and asked, "Your name is Sian, right? You must have been really scared," and Sian shyly replied, "Yes, but I'm feeling better now." Then, the police officer asked, "How are your parents?" "They are abroad, right?" "I have arranged for the housekeeper Kim," he replied. Because in Korean, the word for butler and church deacon is the same, so the policewoman had a bit of a misunderstanding. "Deacon? Do you live in a church?" "No, that's..." When Sion was about to respond, a very luxurious black car appeared behind them. Suddenly, the driver's door opened, and a neatly dressed woman slowly stepped out, her hair tightly tied without a single strand out of place. She was wearing a black suit that looked very formal, and she turned to Sion and said, "Young master, I'm here to pick you up." Sion calmly responded to the housekeeper Kim, "Yes, I'm coming right away." Sion then ran straight to the car, stood in front of the passenger seat, waved goodbye to the two, and kindly reminded Sono, "Stay in touch, and make sure to take care of that bruise on your face, or it'll turn into a scar." After speaking, Sion climbed into the car, and once seated comfortably, butler Kim drove off, leaving Sono and the policewoman behind, watching the car gradually disappear from sight. After Sion's car had gone quite a distance, she asked, "Is his family really rich?" "Yes, very, very rich," Sono replied instinctively. After a while, Sono stood up and said, "If you're done investigating, I'll head home now." Seeing him about to leave, she sternly asked, "Are you planning to go home alone?" When he seemed determined to leave, she said to him, "Kim Ong-min just tried to stab me to death, and now he's dead because of a head injury caused by some unidentified explosive, and I'm the only witness." This statement made him stop, staring at her in shock. "When you were standing in front of me," she said directly, "if this makes you uncomfortable, I apologize, but right now, you are also a suspect in the case of Kim Ong-min. Even if it was intentional or not, you have kidnapped and threatened Go Sang-bum. Therefore, in this situation, I will take responsibility for you. So from now on, you should stay at my place for the time being." Facing that proposal, he shyly refused, "I don't want to, why should I stay in a house with a single woman?" And this made the policewoman burst into laughter. "You still consider me a woman, I'm not a man, am I?" he stammered in reply. "To comfort you," she said, "I have to work often, so I'm not home much anyway. Besides, this is an order from the police, so stop complaining and go pack your things to move to my place today." So that night, he moved to the police officer's house. And when you step in, what immediately catches your eye is a series of training equipment. Go deeper inside, he looked around and wondered, is this a house or a gym? Behind him, she had locked the door and slowly walked into the house, then reminded Sano, "There's an empty room over there. From now on, you can feel free to stay in it. It's late now, so unpack your things." Sano nodded in agreement and turned to her, saying, "You really promise, right? Never come into my room." "Gosh, all right, all right. Boys will be boys," she said helplessly. Then he walked straight into his new room and firmly locked the door. He thought to himself, there's no other way, after all, the policeman's house really is safer. But when he took out the Kin Vireo box, he started to worry. This wasn't his familiar attic room, and he wasn't sure if his glasses would work elsewhere. Then he picked up the device, and suddenly, it lit up with a green light, instructing him to wear it. The sound from the device was so loud it nearly gave him a heart attack. Then he suddenly realized that he wasn't alone, so he turned his gaze toward the door, fearing that the policewoman might hear him. To be sure, he poked his head out and asked, did you hear anything just now?" In front of him, Yi Chi was diligently working out on one of her machines. Hearing his question, she asked, "What did you just say? Why, do you need something?" And it seemed like she really didn't hear anything, so he felt a bit more relieved and ran into his room. Before going in, he didn't forget to lock the door. Then he ran to the glasses and put them on, assuring himself that the volume was low enough that no one outside could hear, and he secretly rejoiced that the device worked here too. Right after he put on the glasses, his manager appeared and informed him that he had been promoted to level 7, along with the usual congratulatory message, but he was a bit puzzled. He was just at level 5 before, and it had only been a day, yet he had already jumped 2 levels. After that, he thong qua ka lai thong bao rang, ka da hok them doak mo tiki nong moi, ky nong I la tang quang thin jiak trong vong ten jie, tang quang thin jiak, du la kai gi vei, sun o thak mak. Immediately, the system answered him. When he used the playback skill, he could increase the volume of the part he wanted to hear. At first glance, he thought it was pretty useless. Then suddenly you realize that this is a skill related to sound. So he immediately switched to review mode, and he selected the conversation between him and Kim Ong-min yesterday. Instantly, he recalled that moment, right when Kim Ong-min suddenly lost his temper and raised his hand to touch his ear. And when the replay video reached the point, Ong-min was frantically touching the earphones. He exclaimed, "Yes, right there, can you amplify the sound in those earphones?" he requested. And immediately, the system approved that request and used the hearing enhancement skill. Thanks to that skill, he could hear an angry man saying, "This is the last warning, turn around and run away, if you don't listen, I will kill you." When the sentence ended, his skill quickly deactivated. Although it lasted only 10 seconds, he could still notice that the voice in the headphones had been distorted. And then you realized that it wasn't by chance that Ong-min's headphones exploded, someone had detonated it remotely. Then, he remembered that this incident was similar to the time Kim Ong-min stabbed him, and the person who spoke had changed the situation he saw in the preview. After noticing a few signs, he concluded that there was someone stronger than him who knew about his ability to foresee events. But who could that person be? You just can't figure it out, so you helplessly resort to using your foresight skill. After a few seconds, he was transported to a luxurious room, primarily adorned in gold tones. Several plush sofas were arranged next to elegant glass tables with diamond-shaped patterns. On these tables, many neatly arranged bottles of liquor were placed. Above him, a chandelier made of gold was lit, providing illumination for the entire spacious room. In each corner of the room, a large speaker was installed, making the place resemble a high-end, expensive karaoke room. And nearby, he saw someone clutching a wound on their stomach, blood continuously flowing from the injury, causing the person to tremble in pain. At the same time, it also drew his full attention. Suddenly, you hear a familiar voice coming from the injured person, who painfully calls out your name. In front of him was the figure of the policewoman, clutching the wound inflicted by someone from the front, struggling to speak. "Suno, run quickly," but despite her command, he stood there, bewildered like a deer frozen in place. Suddenly, she collapsed onto the cold ground, leaving him startled by what was happening before his eyes. His body instinctively moved towards where she had fallen, repeatedly asking, "Yi-chi, what's wrong?" When she fell, she drowsily looked toward Suno, slowly closed her eyes, then, because she was too weak, she fainted in Suno's arms. The next morning, at the house of Officer Yi-chi, just woke up, he called her name. Seeing the boy grumpy just after waking up, she started teasing, "Oh, Suno, did you sleep well?" Getting closer to Yi-chi, he saw her grinding something red and thick. Curious, he asked, "What's that?" "It's a clean drink that I have every morning instead of breakfast," Yi-chi replied. After the drink was blended, she poured it into 2 cups, then handed one to Suno. "Here, you should try a cup too. After drinking it, I bet you'll feel pretty full." When seeing the cup of dark red liquid, he remembered the simulation he went through last night, where he saw Yi-chi suffering from intense pain due to a severe wound in the abdomen. She gradually lost strength and consciousness, collapsing to the ground. Thinking about the terrifying scene in yesterday's simulation, he felt a bit scared. Seeing Suno holding the glass of water without drinking, with a hint of sadness on his face, Yi-chi asked, "What's wrong, don't you like it?" "It's really good for your health." Hearing her voice snapped him out of his thoughts, and he hesitated before saying to Yi-chi, "Sis, when you go to work today, could you maybe wear something extra, like a bulletproof vest?" Before Suno's request, Yi-chi was confused and asked in surprise, "What, why on earth would you wear that thick coat all day? It's so uncomfortable." "Just for today, please," he pleaded. And in response to that request, she thought it over while sipping the drink she had just made and said, "Let me see, go get ready for school quickly, or you'll be late." Suno then held his phone in front of Yi-chi and said, "At least download this. This is an app that helps family members or friends locate each other's positions. We can determine each other's location. I did this because I worry about you," he explained. Seeing how thoughtful her little brother was today, she happily patted his head and said, "Oh my, Suno, you're still scared because of what happened yesterday, aren't you? Okay, chi kan tai kai na vi thoi nhi, thay koda chap nan loi de gi kwa min, ka vui vi dap, vang a. Then, ka doak ko cho den truong de cho kip geo." In class, when Cian hasn't arrived yet, he sits alone in the corner, lost in his thoughts. "Even if I know her location, I can't follow her all day like the police, and today I couldn't convince her to wear a bulletproof vest." In the preview, you were informed that Yi-chi would die at 3:45 p.m. today, and now there are less than 2 hours left until it happens, so to ensure that, you must go find her now to prevent it from happening. But then he thought again. The preview simulation started after she had already been stabbed. No matter how hard Cho tried, he couldn't find another way, and this made him quite anxious. While thinking, He tried to recall the room from last night's simulation and sketched it on paper, then he looked down at the drawing and pondered, that place should look like this, but where exactly is it? Then you ask yourself, should I call and tell her everything that will happen to her? What if she doesn't believe me? What should I do now? A moment later, Cian arrived at the classroom and approached him, asking, we're trading stocks today, right? When will we do it? This isn't the time for that, Suno coldly replied. Because she was so used to his cold attitude, Cian just stayed silent, but then when she saw the picture he had drawn, she exclaimed, oh, is that a private room? You really captured the details well. When he heard what Cian just said, he seemed surprised and asked again, what did you say? After that, Cian pointed at each detail in the picture that Suno had drawn and explained, according to the beer bottles and the basic arrangement of the glasses that he had drawn in this picture, this is definitely a private room. A private room, isn't that the place where the elders usually go to get drunk? He asked again. But how do you know? Suno asked again. My mom used to work at places like that when I was little, Cian replied cheerfully. Is that so? You still don't believe it? And asked Cian again. Seeing that you still have some doubts, Cian revealed more. That's right, while my mom is working, I often play alone in a room like this. Hearing that, Suno unexpectedly asked another question, are there any people like gangsters or something there? Probably, when I was little I met many scary-looking guys. Hearing this, he closed his eyes and thought to himself, damn, if there are guys like that, I can't do much to help Ichi either. Suddenly, Cian's phone rang, and he immediately picked it up. Hello, are you still at the school gate? Yes, I'm still fine. Yes, you're doing great. Just from that short conversation with Cian, your head is already filled with a bunch of questions. Who was that? Who was standing at the school gate? Cian wondered, asking Cian. That's Dong-ho, my new bodyguard, right? Bodyguard. Didn't I tell you yesterday that my dad arranged a bodyguard for me? Who would have thought? The person who's going to be my bodyguard is the same man who helped us when we were being bullied by those upperclassmen. Hearing this, Cian still wasn't fully clear, so he had a blank expression on his face. Seeing him like that, Cian asked, you forgot, didn't you? After a while, he finally asked Cian. He must be good at fighting to be a bodyguard, right? I heard he's top-ranked in this area, Cian said. Cian confidently said that from now on, if anyone bothers you, just tell me, and I'll have him step in. Before he could finish his sentence, Suno suddenly grabbed Cian's hand. Cian, I need your help. This is a life-or-death situation, it's urgent, keep talking. Meanwhile, at a luxurious high-rise hotel, Ichi is arriving here to carry out her mission, and then she approaches a man sitting at the reception desk in the hotel lobby, politely saying, I am a police officer, may I ask if Cho-kun-sang is here? Hearing that, the man picked up his walkie-talkie and asked a colleague, hey, is Kun-sang working today? Then, the person on the other end immediately replied, and the two hung up. Right after shutting down the engine, the man politely led her to a special hallway and said that the room of the person she was looking for was room number 6. Then she walked down the indicated hallway and quickly headed to room number 6. As she opened the door she saw a wealthy man sitting opposite the door. As soon as they met he questioned her, who are you? You're not from the local police, are you? Ignoring his questions, she went straight to the point. Do you know a student named Kim Ong-min? Kim Ong-min? Who is that guy? He's hard to understand. Yi-chi immediately explained that he was an 18-year-old student who had just passed away yesterday. We found recordings of recent calls between you and him, and he tried to dodge, saying, excuse me, officer, I'm a businessman in this area, so do you know how many phone calls a businessman has to make every day? When she noticed him avoiding the truth, she quietly took Mr. Kim Ong-min's old phone and tried to find an audio file. While searching, she said, when we recovered the information inside Mr. Kim Ong-min's damaged phone, we found this audio file. Listen carefully, Kun-sang. Then, she played the audio file at a volume just enough for both of them to hear, and in the recording, he said, everything is going according to plan, right? Yes, I have kidnapped Chan Sano's friend and followed the plan as you instructed. Good job, Ong-min, there's good news waiting for you when everything's done. I'm really looking forward to it, brother. And so the 13-second recording between Kun-sang and Ong-min came to an end. Then, Yi-chi turned off the phone and said to Kun-sang, so, the voice of the person Ong-min called brother sounds just like yours, right? Then she sternly said, if you cooperate now, we can handle this matter quickly, please stay silent and cooperate with the investigation. Hearing her suggestion, he slowly stood up from his luxurious cushioned chair, one hand reaching into his shirt to grab something, chuckling, haha, damn it, I told him to erase all the evidence, that bastard, he never listens. Suddenly, he pulled out a rather long knife, muttering for the policewoman to get out of there. Seeing him holding a weapon, she cautiously stepped back a few paces and screamed in fear, are you crazy? She kept backing away while he arrogantly stepped forward with a sharp knife in hand. You dare use a weapon in front of an investigator from the police headquarters, want to try? He raised the knife, looking in her direction and asked. Suddenly, he sped up, quickly running toward the policewoman, angrily saying, I have to do this, damn it. First attack, Yi Chi dodged in time, and he followed through, chasing the arm holding the knife. Seizing the opportunity, she tightly gripped the handle of Kun Sang's weapon, startling him. Then, Yi Chi quickly struck his chest with her elbow, a powerful blow that knocked him backward, his face smeared with blood from his nose. At the same time, she kicked away the knife he had been holding. After that, he lay on the ground, holding his face in pain, groaning. Standing before Kun Sang, who was trembling and glaring at her with a look of hatred from the ground, she thought to herself, from the beginning, everything had been strange, the use of mini-bombs and violence was excessive for the local gangsters. Then she took out a pair of handcuffs from her bag and firmly asked, Who ordered you? Who told you to do that? Before the policewoman's question, he kept his hands over his face and stubbornly refused to say anything. Seeing him refuse to speak, she immediately flipped him over, pinned his arms down, and angrily said, Can't talk, huh? Well, you'll have plenty of time to talk at the station. For now, you've got a big problem for pulling a knife in front of a cop. Still want to argue? Suddenly, behind her appeared another figure. Sensing the presence of that person, she turned her head towards him. He asked, Do you need something? Behind her, the man said nothing and kept moving closer. Meanwhile, in the hotel lobby, Sono arrived at the reception desk and greeted the man warmly. Then he pointed toward the large door nearby and asked, Can you open this door? I need to go in for a moment. He immediately responded, You crazy fool, do you even know where this is, and you still dare to wear a uniform here, are you stupid? Get out, he said, turning back to his game on the phone. But who is Sono to give up so easily? He pleaded. It will be quick, I just need to check this for a moment. Before the pleading words, he remained unmoved, continuing to play his game. Get lost while I'm still being nice. Facing him, the other dropped the friendly facade and quietly said, That should have been my line. Open the door while I'm still talking nicely, I'm in a hurry, you said with a harsh tone. And this remark of yours made him take his eyes off the game he was playing and look up at you with annoyance. Then he got up from the reception desk, walked over to him, and slapped him, You bastard, how dare you? He then raised his hand and slapped him several more times. Are you stupid? What are you trying to pick a fight for, you crazy bastard? He yelled at him while hitting him. Suddenly, he grabbed his head and pulled him towards the door, making him scream in pain, while he angrily yelled, You dog, come here, today I'm going to kill you. Suddenly, from the emergency exit, Cian rushed out, shouting, Don't hit my friend. His sudden appearance startled the attacker, making him turn towards Cian, wondering what was happening now. Cian then ran over to the two of them, knelt down beside him, and asked, Sono, are you okay? Meanwhile, his hand was still clenched in a fist, pressing down on Sono's head, causing him intense pain as he grabbed his hand in a frenzy. And he asked him, Your friend, huh? Friends who keep secrets from each other like this, huh? Seeing the tension rise and knowing he couldn't fight back against the man in front of him who was suffocating Sono, Cian suddenly screamed for help from Dong-ho. Hearing that, he was puzzled. Huh, who is that? A moment later, Dong-ho slowly walked down the emergency stairs, then coolly appeared at the emergency exit, emotionlessly demanded, Open the door. Before Dong-ho's attitude and appearance, the guard angrily stepped towards him, cursing repeatedly, Damn it, what the hell, what's going on now, damn it. As soon as he approached and was about to raise his hand to strike, Dong-ho swiftly punched him straight in the stomach, sending him flying into the air. The powerful punch left him utterly stunned. Just like that, he flew down from a height equal to that of the bodyguard. Finally, he landed with a thud. Luckily, his massive body saved him from breaking nearly all the bones inside. Meanwhile, Jong-ho stood tall, repeating the original demand, Open the door. He calmly walked over while the other guy was still lying on the ground, panting heavily. Then he leaned in, looked him straight in the eyes, and coldly said, If you don't open the door, I'll take it down myself.